Chapter 16. After ending the communication, Royd looked at Rei Minkai and said, "I didn't expect Her Royal Highness to be kidnapped. Kay, how did you find out?" Rei Minkai raised his hand to put on the headset and said calmly, "Because Her Royal Highness is too dazzling, I can find her in the crowd." Oh, when Royd heard this, he exclaimed, "Too dazzling? TSK. I say, Kay, your luck with women doesn't seem to be that simple. Interesting. Rei Minkai ignored Royd, who was still mocking him, and turned to look at Cecil. "Miss Cecil. Lancelot, prepare to attack." "Understood. The equipment used this time is a handheld rifle, variable varies. Due to the powerful impact ammunition used, please try to avoid being affected by the explosion when shooting." Cecil familiarly made the final preparations for Lancelot's attack while telling Rei Minkai the characteristics of the new equipment. But for the next action, Rei Minkai had his own opinions. "Miss Cecil, did you bring the MSV radiation vibration sword?" "Yes, but it doesn't seem to be necessary, right?" Before Cecil answered, Royd spoke first. "No, it can be used. I can use it." Rei Minkai didn't voice his thoughts out loud. Moreover, when Lancelot was ready and was sent to the supply channel, the situation changed again. Zero. The man that Cornelia had been looking for since she came to District 11 appeared. Because of his appearance, Lancelot was also ordered to suspend the attack and wait for orders. "Oh. Why are they all together? F***CK, looks like your idea of saving the damsel in distress will have to be postponed," Lloyd said mockingly as he looked toward the bridge. "No. It is impossible for the governor to trust Zero. Moreover, the governor probably wants to catch Zero and the terrorists in one fell swoop." Rei Minkai's expression did not change. He remained calm and waited for the order to attack. "Really? There seemed to be a result. Kay, the governor seems to have reached an agreement with Zero. They're on the bridge," Royd muttered before he was startled by the sudden call. "Kay, the governor requests to speak to you alone." "Understood." Rei Minkai nodded and opened the communication channel. "Night, Kay. Now you have one more task. While ensuring the safety of the third princess, Euphemia Libritania, kill Zero and bring his head back to me." On the screen, Cornelia's face was fierce and murderous. Rei Minkai clenched his right fist and knocked on his heart. "Yes, Your Highness." The time of the attack was set to be 3 minutes after Zero entered the hotel. 3 minutes was just the blink of an eye. Just as Rei Minkai adjusted his condition to the most perfect state, the order to attack was issued. "Lancelot, it's time to attack." "Understood." Just as Rei Minkai's voice faded, Lancelot's high-speed driving wheels exploded. In the blink of an eye, Lancelot had dashed 100 meters away, rushing into the depths of the supply channel at lightning speed. The high-speed Lancelot was quickly caught by the enemy hiding in the supply channel. In the next second, the linear cannon, which had caused Sunderland to lose his life, which was also the super electromagnetic grenade heavy artillery that the terrorists were talking about, quickly locked onto Lancelot. The ultra-high voltage filled the thick barrel of the cannon. As long as the voltage reached a critical point, the highly destructive shell would be fired and annihilate all the enemies in one fell swoop. "It's coming." The moment the depth of the channel lit up with electric light, Rei Minkai's hair immediately stood up. Boom! The electric light exploded in the depth of the channel. Rei Minkai's hands pulled back at the same time. The high-speed Lancelot immediately decelerated and reversed the high-speed driving wheels, retreating at the highest speed possible. Then, in the instant that the bullets from the grenade cannon whistled through the air, Rei Minkai's hands alternately pushed and pulled. Under his movements, Lancelot constantly made sharp turns to the left, right, forward, backward, and even jump on the spot and other emergency maneuvers to avoid the large number of bullets that almost sealed the road. Boom! 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 As the bullets smashed into the ground and exploded violently on the walls, Lancelot either flipped, jumped, rushed to the top of the tunnel, or drifted on the screen wall. Like a ghost, he ignored the explosions and charged toward the enemy at full speed. Boom! Another series of violent explosions rang out. However, it still couldn't stop Lancelot's advance. In the smoke, Lancelot raised his rifle. The distance is too short now. You will be affected by the explosion. From the data feedback, Cecil saw Lancelot raising his gun and preparing to shoot and immediately shouted, "No! There's not enough time. We must open the channel as soon as possible." What? The urgency in Ray Minkai's tone made Cecil stunned, but he couldn't understand why Ray Minkai suddenly became so anxious. There was no other reason. It was because the memory fragments that had been silent since the Shinjuku incident suddenly appeared at this critical moment. In the haze, Ray Minkai saw Euphemia's solemn words and resolute expression as she stood up from the crowd squatting on the ground. She stood up bravely for the girl who had almost been brutally beaten by the terrorists. This scene made Ray Minkai's heart suddenly tighten. What would happen after the terrorists who were threatening Cornelia with hostages learned about Euphemia's identity? There was no need for Ray Minkai to think about it. He could already guess. There's not enough time. Lightning lit up in front of his eyes again, and Ray Minkai decisively pressed the trigger. Boom! The moment the bullet was fired, the roar was endless. At the same time, the enemy, in the moment of life and death, also fired with all their might. The strong collided. In the end, the enemy's all-out shooting was defeated by the new weapon Lancelot was equipped with this time. The moment the bullet fired from the rifle broke through the barrier of the grenade and sank into the thick barrel, an earth-shattering explosion sounded. While the incomparably violent power blew up the supply channel in the blink of an eye, it also blew up a huge splash of water dozens of meters high on the surface of the water. Who? Amidst the splash, Lancelot's figure broke out of the water. After that, Lancelot swung his right hand forward, and the rifle that had contributed to killing the enemy was casually discarded on the bridge. This scene drove Royd, who was behind him, crazy. That's new equipment. How can this bastard throw it on the ground like trash? Ray Minkai, who was fully focused on the conference center hotel, did not pay attention to Royd's wailing. Lancelot stretched his right hand behind his back, and the MSV radiation vibration sword was in his hand. Then, Lancelot swung his left hand, and the hook on his forearm immediately shot out. In the blink of an eye, it broke through the glass of the building and firmly hooked onto the hotel wall. Hum! As the rope of the hook quickly retracted, Lancelot slammed into the hotel with the sound of the wind. Boom! Under everyone's watchful eyes, Ray Minkai drove Lancelot directly into the hotel in a rude and unreasonable manner. What? He didn't attack according to the plan. Cornelia, who was standing in the cockpit of the exclusive Gloucester, clenched her right fist, but did not make things difficult for him. This was because she knew that Lancelot's position of attack happened to be around the room where the hostages were. From the beginning, Ray Minkai had already planned for this. Otherwise, in a hurry, he would not have been able to make such a move. If UFFI is hurt, I will not forgive you. Knight K. Although Cornelia understood, Ray Minkai's violation of the battle plan was a fact. In the billowing smoke, the terrorist who was shocked by Lancelot's fierce attack did not even have the chance to stand up before he was knocked down by a figure that rushed out of the smoke. Gotcha! Ray Minkai picked up a submachine gun from the side of the terrorist who was soaked in blood. He casually pulled the bolt, and after confirming that there were no bullets, he kicked open the door and fired. Da-da-da-da-da. The hostages, who had not yet reacted to Lancelot's attack, were frightened by the sudden gunshots and screamed on the ground. In the flash of gunpowder, screams, the terrorists fell to the ground one after another. Quiet! After Ray Minkai confirmed that there were no more enemies around, he shouted loudly. UFFI Euphemia li Britannia. Is Her Royal Highness the third princess here? Ray Minkai saw that the hostages had barely calmed down and asked again. I know you. You're a special knight, K. Her Royal Highness has just been taken away by terrorists. Go and save her. A young woman with short brown hair stood up from the crowd and looked at Ray Minkai and said, You should be UFFI, the guard of Her Royal Highness the third princess. Don't you feel that you have failed in your duty? Take it, now you cover the hostages' retreat. Her Royal Highness, let me save her. Although Ray Minkai knew that the memory fragment that suddenly appeared would not be wrong, but after seeing this female guard who had failed in her duty, his heart was still filled with anger. The female guard also knew that she had failed in her duty. After silently taking the submachine gun from Ray Minkai's hands, she began to organize the evacuation of the hostages. White Cat. Ray Minkai quickly left the warehouse and shouted in a low voice. Cherry Stone. Deal. While running, 2 terrorists suddenly appeared on the other side of the aisle. Damn you, Britannians! Go to hell! They quickly raised the submachine gun in their hands and fired at Ray Minkai. Da-da-da-da-da! In the whistling rain of bullets, Ray Minkai rolled on the ground and quickly hid behind the display cabinet on the other side of the aisle. That girl is in the third room on the left after 30 meters. She seems to be safe right now. The White Cat sat beside Ray Minkai and lazily said, Understood. Ka. In the instant that the enemy ran out of ammunition, Ray Minkai saw the opportunity and suddenly rushed out from behind the display cabinet and fired 2 shots at the terrorists who did not react in time. Pooh! Pooh! The terrorists who were cursing just now fell to the ground with their eyes wide open. Chapter 17. Ta-ta! The sound of footsteps could be heard from the corridor. Behind the sound of footsteps, there were always waves of curses and gunshots. But in this rain of bullets that was enough to drown the corridor, there was a white, blurry little figure that wantonly shuttled back and forth. Cha! The little figure flashed past. In an instant, without attracting anyone's attention, 2 black shadows soared into the sky. And the enemy, who was holding a submachine gun and blocking the corridor with a barrage of bullets, preventing Ray Minkai from breaking through the line of defense, also rolled to the ground along with the 2 black shadows. With a plop, they fell to the ground. What? The 2 terrorists at the back didn't seem to have reacted. They just stared blankly at their companions, who suddenly fell to the ground silently, until the 2 black shadows rolling on the ground slowly stopped at their feet. They were shocked to find that their companions' heads had already fallen to the ground. How is this possible? Amidst the shock, the white shadow reappeared. Finally realizing what had happened, the terrorists immediately raised their guns and madly shot at the white shadow. Da-da-da. However, they did not hit the white shadow. Instead, they were shot to the ground by Ray Minkai, who saw the opportunity to shoot them twice in a row. After turning the corner, it's the room where the girl you're looking for is. The mysterious White Cat's figure gently landed on the top of the display cabinet at the side of the corridor and said to Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai squatted beside the terrorist's corpse and searched a few times. After taking out 2 grenades from it, he nodded. I thought you wanted to use your strength, but in the end, you let me do it. It really surprised me. The mysterious White Cat took a step forward, gracefully stepping on the top of the display cabinet, and said indifferently, Do you want me to use it? From the looks of it, it's all the same. After Ray Minkai reloaded the submachine gun in his hand with a new magazine, he said as he pulled the bolt, Humph. Without memories, it's indeed the same as before. The White Cat sneered and jumped down from the display case, landing on the floor that was covered in blood. The strange thing was that the White Cat's pure white fur was not contaminated by the stench of blood. It was as if there was a mysterious force that separated it from the pool of blood. Hurry up! The battle just now has already alerted those fanatical terrorists. The mysterious White Cat raised its head and glanced at Ray Minkai before turning around and disappearing around the corner. Then, there was a burst of gunfire and sparks. The corner of the corridor was filled with a hail of bullets. Ray Minkai stepped forward with his back against the wall, silently listening to the volume of the gunshots. When the gunshots gradually stopped, he pulled out the pins of the 2 grenades in his hands and threw them deep into the corridor. Grenade! After a series of exclamations, the sound of 2 grenades exploding instantly drowned out the corridor. Ray Minkai lowered his body and rolled to the middle of the corridor. He quickly raised the submachine gun in his hand and continuously fired into the corridor. Even with the thick smoke from the explosion, it could not stop Ray Minkai from killing the enemy. Moreover, in the thick smoke, the mysterious white cat was like a ghost, flashing its sharp claws at the enemy. Not long after, with the cooperation of Ray Minkai and the mysterious white cat, the last obstacle was finally cleared. "It's here," the mysterious white cat said as it squatted in front of a door and looked at Ray Minkai, who was reloading. Ray Minkai nodded, but did not immediately turn the door lock. After a moment of silence, Ray Minkai raised his leg and kicked the door, then immediately returned to his original position. Da-da-da-da-da. Sure enough, the moment the door was kicked open by Ray Minkai, a burst of gunfire more violent than the previous battle erupted from the room. Not to mention other things, just by looking at the wall opposite the door that was rapidly increasing the number of bullet holes, one could tell that the people hiding in the room were already prepared. "Stop!" In less than a minute, a rather majestic voice sounded from the room. "Britannians over there, listen up, put down your weapons and surrender. Otherwise, the safety of the 3rd Princess Euphemia Le Britannia will not be guaranteed." TSK. Ray Minkai's eyes flashed with a cold light, then he threw the submachine gun in his hand into the open door. Clang! Following the sound of the submachine gun falling to the ground, Ray Minkai with his hands raised slowly appeared in front of the terrorist. Humph! Was he alone? How brave! After seeing Ray Minkai appear alone, a middle-aged man with a full beard, crab-like hairstyle, and wearing an old-fashioned neon military uniform had a look of admiration in his eyes. Regardless of the enemy's force field, the middle-aged man who had a martial spirit was indeed moved by Ray Minkai's bravery. "Although I admire your bravery, Britannians, your timing is not right." The middle-aged man raised his right hand and smiled. "Attack! K! Quickly run!" Upon seeing the middle-aged man giving the order to kill Ray Minkai, Euphemia, who was being held hostage by a soldier, immediately shouted. Da-da-da-da! Gunshots sounded again. However, in the bullet screen, no one was able to see the blood splattering out from the bullet holes, and even Ray Minkai's figure disappeared. "What's going on?" Ray Minkai, who suddenly disappeared, made the middle-aged man stare blankly for a moment. In the next moment, the middle-aged man was surprised to find that he seemed to have risen into the air, and then rotated and fell to the ground. Until the moment before his eyes fell into darkness, he discovered that his body was still in the same place. "Lieutenant Colonel!" Amidst the exclamations, a white figure shuttled through the many terrorists, and bursts of blood mist exploded one after another. "Who is it? Shoot! Shoot!" Unable to see clearly and unable to capture the enemy, the terrorists who had lost their leader panicked. Plop! Plop! In the blink of an eye, the situation was reversed in an instant. The terrorists who were holding Euphemia hostage just now were all down in a short moment. Only a young man wearing a white pilot's uniform with a silver mask on his face and the 3rd princess, who was being protected behind him, were left. "Wonderful! Who are you?" After Ray Minkai suddenly burst out and killed the enemy in an extremely strange way and successfully took back Euphemia, a figure wearing a black helmet and a black cloak slowly walked out from the shadows of the room with a pistol. "Zero!" Ray Minkai's eyes were full of murderous intent, and his hanging right hand was slowly dripping drops of dark red blood to the ground. In that critical moment, Ray Minkai finally chose to use the power of the mysterious white cat. Therefore, under the power enhancement of the mysterious white cat, Rei Minkai was able to transform into a ghost and reverse the situation in an extremely strange way in a short time and save Euphemia. Don't move. Although your performance just now was amazing, no matter how powerful you are, there will be a corresponding price. Masked Knight, if you still want to save the third princess, then stay there obediently. He had to admit, it was only the first time he used his power in front of others, but Zero had already seen through Rei Minkai's details at a glance. This made Rei Minkai wary of Zero. Kai. He's right. With your current body, you won't be able to withstand the power for too long. The white cat's voice sounded in Rei Minkai's ears. Rei Minkai's eyes narrowed slightly, and he shielded Euphemia, who wanted to say something, behind him. Still want to kill me? Masked Knight. See. This is the button that can blow this hotel to the sky. If you want to kill me, then come at me. Zero's voice was filled with an unhurried power, causing Rei Minkai to be extremely fearful. Yes. Just as Zero said, now Rei Minkai felt that the power that allowed him to reverse the situation in an instant seemed to have reached the point of exhaustion. If he delayed any longer, he was afraid that even Euphemia would not be able to be protected. Making a choice, Rei Minkai lifted his foot and kicked a corpse on the ground in the direction of Zero. Immediately after, Rei Minkai turned around and hugged Euphemia. While apologizing, he quickly rushed out of the room. Your Highness, I'm sorry. Now please bear with me for a while. Rei Minkai hugged Euphemia and rushed out of the room. Just a few steps later, a sudden vibration came from the bottom of the hotel. Zero detonated the bomb. UFFI, hold on tight. Rei Minkai clenched his teeth, no longer caring that his power had reached its limit, and rushed toward Lancelot's location with all his strength. Your eyes. Running at full speed, Euphemia, who was in Rei Minkai's arms, looked in shock at the tears of blood flowing from under the mask. Rei Minkai did not answer, only clenched his teeth, lowered his head, and slammed open the door, rushing in front of Lancelot. Boom! The fragile floor was simply unable to withstand that violent explosion, and in an instant, it turned into countless fragments and shot out in all directions. Fortunately, Rei Minkai had already brought Euphemia and sat in Lancelot's cockpit, and successfully activated Lancelot and the energy light shield on Lancelot's arm. Under the attack of the fragments, Lancelot, who had the energy light shield raised, retreated at full speed. Until the moment when he was about to leave the hotel, he jumped back with all his strength and jumped from the hotel into the air. UFFI, hold on tight. Although Lancelot had already escaped the danger of being crushed by the hotel, Lancelot was currently 100 meters high in the air. If he did not take action in time, even if Lancelot was not broken, Rei Minkai and Euphemia, who were sitting in the cockpit, would also suffer from the huge impact caused by falling to the ground. At the critical moment, under the control of Rei Minkai, Lancelot raised his left hand and shot out a claw towards the top of the hotel. The moment the claw was fixed on the top of the hotel, Lancelot's body immediately stopped falling, and quickly flew towards the top of the hotel. However, that was only relatively speaking. After all, the hotel itself was in a situation where it quickly fell into the lake because of the explosion of the bomb that Zero had placed at the bottom. But even so, it was enough to let Lancelot escape the danger of falling. Rumble! In the smoke and dust, the collapse of the hotel gradually came to an end. And on the platform of the top of the hotel that survived, Lancelot stood there safe and sound. This made everyone who was frightened by the sudden explosion secretly breathe a sigh of relief. Are you okay? When the dust was almost settled, a panicked voice sounded in Lancelot's cockpit. What happened? Lancelot. As soon as Cecil turned on the internal camera of Lancelot's cockpit, he was immediately frightened by Rei Minkai's pale face and bleeding from his 5 orifices. Wake up! The third princess panicked and sounded throughout the communication channel. Chapter 18. Governor! Governor! Royal sister! Just an hour, just an hour! Just let me go to the hospital! On the night of the kidnapping incident, Euphemia, who had just returned to the governor's mansion, had yet to catch her breath when she requested to go to the hospital with Cornelia. The result was obvious. Before the effects of the kidnapping incident were completely quelled, Cornelia could not and did not dare to let Euphemia leave the governor's mansion. In fact, while Cornelia was relieved that all the kidnappers had died, it also brought about a new problem. The murderer, Zero, who had killed the third Prince Clovis, had used the influence of the kidnapping incident to publicly announce the establishment of an illegal organization called the Black Knight Order. If Cornelia had not been concerned about Euphemia's safety after witnessing all of this, she would have definitely ordered Zero's group to be wiped out immediately. With countless thoughts flashing through her mind, Cornelia stopped and turned to look at her sister, whose face was full of anxiety. She sighed and said, "UFFI? I know you're very worried about that night, but didn't the doctor already come to a conclusion? Although it looks very frightening from the outside, it's only an injury sustained in an intense battle." As she spoke, Cornelia stepped forward and raised her hand to caress Euphemia's face. She said softly, "UFFI, what you should do now is to adjust your state of mind, rest well, and then choose a suitable time to visit that person, Knight K. Otherwise, his efforts to save you from the hands of the terrorists would have been in vain. Do you understand?" Seeing Cornelia's firm attitude, Euphemia finally bit her lips and nodded to listen to Cornelia's words. She returned to her room to rest under the guidance of a maid who had rushed over from Wonsoon. Seeing Euphemia return to her room under the guidance of numerous maids, Cornelia sighed softly. As her sister, Cornelia knew that if Euphemia continued to persist, she was afraid that she would also show signs of loosening up and allow Euphemia to go to the hospital to visit the masked knight. "Dalton, what's the result of the investigation of the Conference Center Hotel?" After stabilizing her mind, Cornelia quickly put her mind back to business. "Yes. According to the results of the investigation from the corpses unearthed from the ruins, the terrorists were indeed killed by Knight K's sword, as the deputy governor said." "Sword? How is that possible? Although our Britannia Empire's soldiers are outstanding, our enemies are terrorists who were able to persevere for so many years in such an overwhelming disadvantage. How could such well-trained soldiers be killed by a sword?" Obviously, Cornelia did not completely believe her sister's words. She knew that Euphemia was hiding something from her. Even if these things would not negatively affect Euphemia, or even her, Cornelia, Euphemia's concealment did make Cornelia feel anxious. Continue to clear the ruins. In addition, inform the publicity department to do necessary reports on this incident. "Yes, Governor." Standing in the aisle, Cornelia tilted her head and looked at the moon hanging high in the night sky outside the window. She sighed and said, "Perhaps there will be a storm." At the same time, in a room in the Student Union office building of Ashford College. "Damn it!" Following a curse, a black helmet was thrown onto the bed. It rolled until it hit an exquisite body before it stopped. "What happened? Did someone attack you?" With the usual cold expression, the woman lying on the bed hugging a pillow slightly raised her head and looked at the young man with an exasperated expression. "What was that? What was that power?" The young man took a few steps forward, grabbed the girl's shoulder, and asked quickly, "Power?" As her long green hair flew, the girl's expression became more and more confused. "Power? Don't you already know?" "No. That's definitely not Gia's power." See. Before you formed a contract with me, did you also have a contractor similar to me?" Suddenly, the young man thought of a possibility. The green-haired girl in front of him had an immortal body. In other words, she was not as simple as she looked on the surface. She was actually an existence that had lived for at least a few hundred years. Therefore, the young man thought that there must have been other people like him who had made a contract with C in the past few hundred years. Calm down. The green-haired girl, C, grabbed the young man's hands and coldly shouted. It was just an accident. How could it make you like this? Is the oath you swore so simple that it can't withstand a single blow? With C's cold shout, the young man finally regained his rationality. He let go of C's shoulder, took a few steps back, and fell onto the sofa. He raised his hand to cover his face and muttered, "That was hell. A second ago I was still alive and the next second my head was separated from my body. Are you afraid just like that? Have you forgotten? Before this, how many people have you killed with your own hands? How many people have committed suicide fanatically because of your order? You, who have nothing but bones behind you, are afraid of this?" Luluxiu. C sat up from the bed, looked at the depressed young man, and said word by word. "Yes. I have nothing but bones behind me." The young man named Luluxiu snorted coldly, looked up at C, and said with a burning gaze, "I should thank you, C. But you haven't answered my previous question. C, do you have another contractor like me?" C was silent. The two of them looked at each other without any emotion. They were just looking at each other. Gradually, C subconsciously avoided Luluxiu's gaze. When the moonlight passed through the thin curtain and scattered on the ground, C's voice sounded faintly. "Yes, but he doesn't have as much power as you said." As expected, Luluxiu's gaze gradually sharpened. C's confession made Luluxiu feel a sense of urgency. The girl in front of him was no doubt his contractor, and also the source of Geas, which he relied heavily on now. If C felt that he didn't have the ability to fulfill her wish, it meant that Geas would be taken back. C. What's his name?" Luluxiu's voice was calm. However, C sensed a trace of murderous intent in it. "Don't worry, Luluxiu. That child won't be a hindrance to you or me." C avoided Luluxiu's gaze again, and said with a calm but slightly pitiful voice, "That child is just a poor child that I dragged into hell." "Hell?" Luluxiu snorted coldly when he heard the word. "Hell? Very well. If that's the case, I'll put him aside. C. If he affects my plan, I'll kill him." C fell silent. She didn't know how to respond to Luluxiu. Whether it was Luluxiu or the poor child, C couldn't find a solution in a short time. "Come to think of it, C, you immortal witch, have you really never seen a power other than Geas?" C shook her head and gave an affirmative answer to Luluxiu's question. "No, I haven't. Although I can't remember how many years I've lived, I'm sure that Geas is the only supernatural power in this world." "Is that so? I see." This time, Luluxiu believed C's words. He turned around and opened the curtains, gazing in the direction of the river, and muttered, "It seems that there's another power in this world that we don't know about that's disturbing the world. Are you afraid, Luluxiu? You know, when humans face the unknown, they'll always feel fear." C turned to look at Luluxiu's back. Luluxiu put down the curtains and turned around. With his back to the moonlight, he looked at C with an unwavering expression. Fear? Yes. Right now I'm very afraid. And very afraid. However, I'm looking forward to this unknown power disrupting the world as soon as possible. Because only then can I realize my dream in the shortest time possible to destroy Britannia. A few days later, Cornelia, who had finally finished dealing with the aftermath of the kidnapping, had yet to catch her breath when she was disturbed by the sudden arrival of Euphemia. Cornelia glanced at the captain of the guards, Gilbert, who had a helpless expression. She shook her head slightly and motioned for the others to leave the room. "UFFI, have you rested well these past few days?" Cornelia smiled. Royal sister. I've rested enough. Can I go to the hospital for a visit now? You know, this is also one of the duties of the deputy governor. After a few days, Euphemia actually used the title of deputy governor in an attempt to obtain permission to go to the hospital. This change made Cornelia not know whether to laugh or cry. However, Cornelia finally agreed to Euphemia's request. However, before letting Euphemia go to the hospital, Cornelia gave a warrant to Euphemia and asked her to bring it to Ray Minkai. Governor, is it really okay to do this? After Euphemia left the governor's mansion, Adjutant Dalton's face showed a hint of hesitation. Problem? What's the problem? To District 11, although I, Cornelia Li Britannia, am the new governor, to the nobles who control this land, I'm just a passerby. Cornelia stood in front of the window and watched as the convoy carrying Euphemia moved further and further away. She said in a sonorous voice, she said with a strong voice, "This is undoubtedly the truth." However, they had forgotten one thing. Although I, Cornelia, will not be the governor of District 11 for long, my sister, Euphemia Li Britannia, will be the governor of District 11. At this point, Cornelia turned to look at her right-hand man, Dalton, and asked in a low voice, "Under such circumstances, should I personally clean up this rotten land before handing it over to the third princess, Euphemia?" Cornelia's frankness shocked Dalton. He did not expect that from the beginning, Cornelia did not care about the position of governor of District 11. Instead, she decided to clean it up and hand it over to her sister. "Yes, Your Highness, as you wish." Chapter 19. Congratulations! As soon as Ray Minkai opened his eyes and woke up from his coma, a familiar voice, a familiar face, and a familiar cynical smile appeared in front of him. Royd. Ray Minkai frowned, turned his head left and right, looked around, and found that he was lying in a ward. After thinking about it, Ray Minkai gradually remembered the moment when the conference center hotel collapsed. In order to escape with Euphemia, he had to choose to preserve his last trace of strength and drove Lancelot to the top floor of the hotel. In the end, at the moment when the danger was gone, the backlash of power caused Ray Minkai to fall into a coma. Ray Minkai's memory ended here. TSK. Damn, it was really dangerous at that time. Although you saved Lancelot and Her Royal Highness, your mask was almost taken off by Her Royal Highness Euphemia. Royd touched his chin while looking at the silver mask on Ray Minkai's face. On the side, Sayer also said, "Speaking of which, it was really dangerous. If we were a step late, Her Royal Highness Euphemia would have taken off your mask and checked your condition. You know, your face was covered in blood at that time." "Is that so?" Ray Minkai raised his hand and touched the mask on his face, feeling the coldness. Although the situation at that time was that Ray Minkai was forced to wear this mask, as time passed, whether it was Royd, Sayer, or Ray Minkai himself, they all maintained a tacit understanding and jointly kept the secret hidden under the mask. Therefore, this mask was impossible and absolutely could not be taken off by others. According to the results of the examination, there are no major problems with your body. You only need to stay in the hospital for 3 days for observation, then you can be discharged. Sayer glanced at the medical record hanging at the end of the bed and said with a smile, Yes. If I knew anything about biology, I'm afraid I would have to study your body. How enviable! From the looks of it, such a terrifying injury actually healed in a few days. Royd clicked his tongue in wonder as he looked at Ray Minkai's medical record. Suddenly, he slapped his head and exclaimed, "Oh, right. Here's your new job." New job? Ray Minkai blinked. He seemed to be slow because he had been unconscious for a long time. Here. This was a warrant issued by Governor Cornelia. It was brought here by Deputy Governor Uffi Leah 3 hours ago. Cecil picked up a document from the table beside him and handed it to Ray Minkai. When Ray Minkai took the document and opened it, Roy didn't forget to add salt and vinegar. What a pity! If Her Highness Euphemia had come 3 hours later, she might have been able to see the hero in her heart. Royd. Cecil seemed to be unable to stand Royd's addition of salt and vinegar and quickly stopped him. Royd curled his lips and straightened his face. He looked at Ray Minkai, who had finished reading the warrant, and asked, "So, Kay, what's the new job?" Ray Minkai raised his hand and handed the warrant to Royd. "Royd, take a look too. After all, it has something to do with the special mission." When Royd heard this, he reached out and took the warrant. As a result, as soon as he saw the contents of the warrant, Royd screamed, "Impossible! If this goes on, how can Lancelot collect actual combat data?" Cecil, who was somewhat confused, took the warrant from Royd and looked at it. He couldn't help but exclaim, "The pilot Knight K from the Special Mission Guide Technical Department will be in charge of the Special Department from the day he receives the warrant. He will be responsible for investigating and dealing with all inappropriate matters in Area 11. Sigh. If K accepts this warrant, Lancelot won't have a chance to attack again," Royd said while grabbing his hair with a frown. Compared to Royd's frown, Ray Minkai had another opinion. "No, Royd. Even if I accept this warrant, I can't pilot Lancelot to battle. You should know what the inappropriate matters in Area 11 are pointing to." "What is it?" Royd was taken aback. After blinking his eyes quickly, he suddenly screamed, "Aha! I get it. The Black Knight Regiment is inappropriate. The strange explosion at the port is also inappropriate. And those guerrillas are also inappropriate. If we casually bring out these factors, it might be an opportunity for Lancelot to attack." As he spoke, Royd laughed. "Moreover, we don't always need to submit applications. In terms of authority, we should now be regarded as a subordinate to the governor's office, but we maintain an independent department." "Probably that's it." Ray Minkai nodded. "If I'm not wrong, maybe the governor will send someone to join this suddenly established department." Wait, now we're being sent to join this new department? It was Sehill's turn to be slow. Yes. Royd nodded again and again. "I thought it was not a good thing, but I didn't expect Governor Cornelia to give such a large authority to Kay. Is this really okay? Such a large authority, I'm afraid it will cause trouble, right? Moreover, even if such a department is to be established, it's not our turn to be sent, and it's not Kay's turn to be the person in charge, right?" Regarding Royd's optimism, Sehill always considered the long term. "No. Because of this, the governor issued this order. Not to mention the existence of a nameless knight, I'm afraid that only a few people will know about it. Therefore, after receiving this order, our low-key style can also provide cover for the early operations. Therefore, in terms of investigating Zero, as well as other matters, we will have more convenient conditions than the personal guards." Although Ray Minkai had been unconscious for the past few days, his sharp mind naturally guessed the meaning behind this order. The next day, a visitor proved that Ray Minkai's guess was correct. Long silver hair tied into a slanted ponytail, brown skin, a tall figure, and a serious and fierce expression. This was Veretta New, whom he had not seen for a long time. Ever since the internal conflict in the Pure Blood sect, Ray Minkai had not seen her again. Moreover, from the information he received from Royd, it seemed that due to the internal conflict in the Pure Blood sect, she was under investigation. Now, this arrogant mainstay of the Pure Blood sect was standing in front of Ray Minkai, solemnly bowing to Ray Minkai. 9th Special Division, Veretta New, reporting on behalf of Governor Cornelia Lee Britannia. Ray Minkai stood up from the bed and returned the greeting. "Welcome to us, Veretta New." "Yes. Thank you very much." After the usual greeting, Ray Minkai let Veretta sit on a chair and said with a slight nod, "Although I already guessed that the governor would send someone here, I didn't expect it to be an acquaintance of yours, Veretta." Veretta shook her head slightly, seeming to be hesitant. But soon, she made a decision. "Actually, it was I who requested to be transferred here." The observant Ray Minkai noticed the unwillingness on Veretta's face. Did something happen? As soon as he spoke, Ray Minkai immediately stopped talking. "No. If it's inconvenient, you don't have to say it. Now I need you to do something for me." Veretta opened her mouth, stood up, and replied, "Yes. Please tell me." Veretta. Before tomorrow, he had to investigate the social benefits provided to 11. Also, if possible, I hope to have a report on the illegal drug refrain on my desk before I leave the hospital. Can you do that? Facing Ray Minkai's obviously difficult request, Veretta did not back down. Instead, she felt that her choice might not be wrong. "Yes. No problem." The brown beauty decisively accepted the first mission. The first mission was successfully issued. But for this new department that seemed to have great authority, but in fact it only targeted the Black Knight Squad. The road ahead was still long. Moreover, when Veretta was collecting information on the social benefits provided to 11, the Black Knight Squad lurking in the dark finally made their move. Under the leadership of the Black Knight Squad, under the leadership of Zero, the Black Knight Squad quickly arrested several corrupt officials and businessmen who secretly withheld social benefits and other aid materials and sentenced them to death. In just a few days, even if Ray Minkai was still in the hospital, he could hear some rumors from the nurses coming and going. After all, the officials who were executed by the Black Knight Squad were not low in status. Therefore, the speed of the news was very fast. Under such circumstances, Ray Minkai no longer stayed in the hospital. Instead, he chose to leave the hospital early and went to the temporary office arranged for him. Veretta, who heard the news early, also put all the prepared information on the desk and waited for Ray Minkai's inspection. At the same time, the newcomers who were also transferred from their original positions by Cornelia to this new department also lined up in the office and waited for Ray Minkai's arrival. As soon as he stepped into the office, Ray Minkai couldn't help but secretly rejoice that the office was spacious enough to allow all 20 of his teammates to stand in front of the desk in a relaxed manner. Ray Minkai ignored the various looks in the eyes of these newcomers. Instead, he calmly walked behind the desk and stood in his seat. After he exchanged glances with Veretta, he looked at his new subordinates. "Perhaps you are all wondering about one thing. Why did the governor transfer you to this unknown department and let you be far away from the positions that you were once familiar with and had a promising future? I am also wondering the same thing as you. I am also wondering why the governor gathered us here." Ray Minkai paused, raised his hand and knocked on the documents on the desk, and said in a deep voice, "But as long as you finish reading these documents on the desk, look carefully. My doubts, and yours, will be solved." District 11. As a satellite territory, when it was supposed to provide supplies and support to the brave soldiers of the Empire on the front lines, when it was supposed to provide strength for the prosperity of the Empire, it secretly bred corruption that shouldn't exist. Darkness. Ray Minkai casually picked up the documents related to the distribution of social welfare and shook them in front of the line. "Perhaps you will laugh at me, this is just the normal state of the Empire. This is just the attitude that the Empire should have in the darkness. In the face of such common sense, my answer is, you are all wrong. Although Governor Cornelius strictly differentiates between the Britannians and the numbers, the governor knows that the Britannians should fight on the front lines for the prosperity of the Empire, lay down their heads, and shed their blood. And the numbers, under the protection of the noble and glorious Britannians, should conscientiously produce supplies and support for the Empire's soldiers. This is the attitude that District 11 should have. It should have. Speaking of this, Ray Minkai picked up the document, threw it at the line, and asked loudly, You, tell me loudly, why did District 11 become like this now? Is 11 stupid and unteachable? Was it because of the illegal drugs flowing into the country? Or is it because of the official corruption? In an instant the audience was silent. Veretta, standing next to Ray Minkai, looked at Ray Minkai in shock. She never expected that Ray Minkai would say something so shocking that he directly lifted the veil of the unspoken rules hidden under the table in District 11. In the silence, Ray Minkai suddenly burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha. It seems that you all understand what is going on here? Ray Minkai snorted coldly, raised his hand and pointed to the door, and said coldly, Those who are afraid can leave immediately. Those who are bold can stay. 30 seconds to consider. Veretta, count down. Yes. Veretta responded and began to count down. 30. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Veretta, who finished the countdown, looked at Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai nodded his head in satisfaction as he looked at the line of people who hadn't left. It seems that those who stay are bold people. Very good. Then, from today onwards, we will all be part of the Special Department Q directly under Governor Cornelia. As soon as Ray Minkai's voice fell, Veretta took the initiative to lead everyone and shouted respectfully, Yes, Lord. Chapter 20. The bright moon hung high in the night sky. Under the night sky, even in the early hours of the morning, there was still an endless flow of traffic on the ring road. A convoy was quickly driving along the ring road to a warehouse on the edge of the concession. The personnel are ready. In the command vehicle in the middle of the convoy, Veretta handed a document to Ray Minkai sitting in front of the command console. Ray Minkai nodded, took the document and flipped through it for a while, then put it on the table. Zero, will the Black Knight order really appear? Veretta's eyes paused on the document, then turned to Ray Minkai and asked. Since the end of the hostage kidnapping incident, there have been continuous attacks. The culprits were undoubtedly the Black Knight Order. But in fact, the Black Knight Order targeted some criminals and corrupt officials who were greedy for social benefit. As a result, the reputation of the Black Knights soared among the 11 members. And in a sense, the Black Knight Order led by Zero was actually helping the concession to eliminate the parasite. They will come. Judging from the frequency and scale of the attacks during this period, Zero and the Black Knight Order have fewer and fewer targets to choose from. Ray Minkai's right index finger tapped on the document and he chuckled. Although the nobles and officials are very greedy, they all cherish their lives without exception. In these many attacks, no one has been able to escape from the hands of the Black Knight. Therefore, when the nobles and officials shrink their forces to protect themselves, the goal of Zero and the Black Knight Order has become very clear. Veretta quickly followed Ray Minkai's train of thought. Yes. Veretta, do you remember the memory loss you suffered in the Shinjuku incident? Ray Minkai turned his head and looked at the brown beauty. Shinjuku incident. Ray Minkai didn't mention it, but as soon as he mentioned the Shinjuku incident, Veretta's sense of shame immediately rose, making her furious. Yes. At that time, his memory was so blurry that he couldn't remember it clearly. Have you found a clue? Realizing that Ray Minkai wouldn't bring up the Shinjuku incident for no reason, Veretta couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. Yes. I just have some ideas. Ray Minkai nodded, but he didn't say it immediately. Instead, he gave an answer that Veretta was looking forward to. My idea is not enough to prove everything. Therefore, I need more evidence. Veretta, if you can get in touch with Jeremiah Ching, no, it should be Jeremiah Godebald now, perhaps my idea will be proven faster. In the face of Ray Minkai's statement, Veretta nodded and said very understandingly, Yes. Then, after this operation, I will try to communicate with Jeremiah and let him come in person to communicate with you. Yes. I'm counting on you. Not long after, the convoy drove off the ring road and came to a large remote warehouse on the edge of the concession. Although this warehouse looked very remote and uninhabited, when the convoy approached, a car suddenly rushed out from both sides of the road and blocked the road to the warehouse. This is the warehouse group under the name of Earl Augustus. Please inform your unit. After the convoy was forced to stop by the two cars, a middle-aged man also came out of the car and shouted at the convoy with a rather imposing manner. Augustus? Ray Minkai turned his gaze to Veretta. Augustus is one of the supervisors in charge of the logistics of the 11th district. So there are indeed many large warehouses under his name. Veretta's answer made Ray Minkai understand how hard the bone he was about to bite was. Even so, Ray Minkai still stood up from his seat, picked up the microphone in one hand, and said in a deep voice, "The convoy has been intercepted. Everyone, act immediately. Attack the warehouse as fast as possible, control all the personnel, and check how many contraband are hidden in the warehouse one by one." "Yes, your lord." Under Ray Minkai's order, the soldiers who had been ready immediately rushed out of the car and quickly controlled the middle-aged man who was still shouting at the convoy. Then, soldiers with live ammunition rushed into the warehouse door and pressed all the people who did not react to the situation to the ground. "You, who are you? This is the property under the name of Earl Augustus. Who gave you the right to violate the dignity of the sacred and noble nobles?" "Pa!" Before the middle-aged man who was controlled by the soldiers could finish speaking, Veretta, who had just walked out of the command vehicle, stepped forward and gave him a hard slap. "You!" Looking at the middle-aged man who was shouting with the backing behind him, but now only had a shocked expression, Veretta suddenly felt a trace of pleasure in her heart, and finally understood. What should she do? As one of the few female knight in the Britannia army, Veretta had the lofty goal of becoming a noble. Otherwise, she would not have joined the pure-blood faction and become the right-hand man of Jeremiah, who was still the border earl at that time. However, after the incident with Orange, Valletta had to admit that her backer, Borgeremia, who was at the border, had been defeated after a short period of glory. Since then, she had to bear the shame of being called Orange. And the pure-blood faction was unable to recover from this setback, and fell into a slump. Therefore, when Cornelia summoned her, Veretta chose to join this new department without hesitation. Now she seemed to have seen hope, the hope of becoming a noble. "Earl Augustus, if there is a chance, I will visit him. But you, I'm afraid you can no longer serve your earl." Wearing a headset, Ray Minkai listened to the report of the soldiers who had taken control of the warehouse and began to count the goods while walking in front of the middle-aged man with a trace of ridicule on his lips, and said coldly, "You, who are you? Who gave you the courage to intrude into Augustus?" "Pa!" This time, Veretta did not make a move, but the soldier who was controlling the middle-aged man waved his fist, and suddenly the middle-aged man's words were swallowed back into his stomach. "Who am I?" After tonight, you will know. And your master will know too." Ray Minkai glanced at the middle-aged man faintly, then turned around and walked into the warehouse with Veretta. As the liquidation work progressed, boxes of 12 red bottles were moved to the open space at the entrance of the warehouse by the original staff of the warehouse. Illegal drugs refrain. There are actually so many of them. Standing beside Ray Minkai, Veretta looked at the illegal drugs that had been piled up into a small mountain, and the boxes that were still being moved out by the staff in an endless stream. Humph! How ugly! Even if the nobles look down on number, they will not treat number as a person. Ray Minkai's voice gradually became cold. Although the relevant information was collected before, whether it was Ray Minkai or Veretta, they did not expect the number of illegal drugs hidden in this warehouse to be so many. At this time, a soldier ran forward and reported to Veretta in a low voice. We received a report that there seemed to be some unidentified people wandering around near this warehouse. The soldiers are verifying the situation. They are here? Veretta, tell the soldiers to withdraw. After that, let's prepare to greet our opponents. Lei Mingkai nodded and said confidently, Yes, your lord. At this time, on a hillside 1 kilometer away from the warehouse, there was a group of figures moving quickly. Their target should be the cluster of warehouses that was about 1 kilometer ahead. However, when they were not far away from the warehouse, the leading figure wearing a black helmet and a black cloak suddenly stopped. He raised his right hand and clenched it into a fist, signaling the people following behind him to stop. What happened, Zero? Among the people, a tall, honest-looking man came forward and asked. Something is wrong. A dull voice came from the helmet. Something is wrong? The man was stunned, looked around, and said with some doubts. I didn't find anything wrong. Too careless, Fan. As the leader, you must always be vigilant of the changes around you. Otherwise, your carelessness will lead to the destruction of the entire team. After Zero scolded the man, he looked around, then climbed up the ladder on the side of the house not far away. After looking at the area where the target warehouse was located for a while, he took out the communicator. Karen, can you see the situation of the warehouse from there? Yes. Wait a moment. As soon as the voice fell, in the shadow of the building on the other side, a Glasgow painted in red turned on the infrared detector on its head and looked at the warehouse area as far as possible from the maximum detection distance. Zero. It seems that they are carrying out loading and unloading operations. Those staff members are placing some goods in the open space in front of the warehouse. Loading and unloading operations? Karen's answer made Zero slightly stunned. He knew that their goal was a warehouse that stored illicit drugs and distributed them all over the world. According to common sense, such a warehouse should be as low-key as possible to avoid attracting attention and causing the matter to be exposed. However, but now it had become so high-profile that it was hard to believe. Could it be that their goal was wrong? Was the information collected wrong? Regarding this point, Zero denied it. Even if he suffered a crushing defeat in the battle with Cornelia in the Saitama area, it could not shake Zero's confidence in his ability to analyze information. Therefore, there was only one answer. We have been one step ahead of us. Zero gritted his teeth, calmed down the unwillingness in his heart, and said in a deep voice, Karen, Fan, cancel the operation. Let's retreat. What? We are already at the door, why don't we go in? Among the team members, the impetuous and somewhat conceited Shinichiro Tamashiro immediately complained loudly when he heard that they were going to retreat. Tamashiro, shut up. Zero has his reasons for canceling the operation. Fan immediately stopped Shinichiro Tamashiro's muttering. After returning to his teammates, Zero said something that surprised the Black Knight Squad. Yes. Black Knight Squad, listen up. I'm afraid we will have a new opponent in the future. Chapter 21. Have you smelled something? In the night breeze, the silver mask reflected the moonlight. Ray Minkai looked at the busy crowd below with a faint smile. Then I'll send someone to chase after them, Veretta said. Ray Minkai shook his head and raised his hand to stop Veretta. No, there's no need. Today is just a greeting. We will have many chances to fight against the Black Knight Regiment in the future. Ray Minkai lowered his head and looked at the middle-aged man who was detained by the soldiers. He looked at the boxes of illegal drugs being moved to the empty space in front of the warehouse. His face was ashen. Today's results are enough to be considered a good start. Veretta did not understand Ray Minkai's meaning. However, after thinking for a while, she felt that she understood, but she could not explain why. Looking at Veretta's beautiful face, Ray Minkai faintly smiled with his slender eyebrows slightly furrowed. Veretta, it's about time. Pack up and send a message to the governor. Just say that the mission is complete. Yes. The first mission of Department Q was completed very well. Although they met the Black Knight Regiment led by Zero as predicted, the results were enough to provide Cornelia with a satisfactory answer. The next day, Cornelia, who had just arrived at the government office, was blocked by a group of nobles. The reason was obvious, especially when Cornelia saw the amiable-looking middle-aged man standing in front of the nobles. She had already guessed the purpose of these people's visit. Count Augustus, why did you bring people to block the governor's way? The captain of the guards, Gilbert, took a step forward and stopped in front of Cornelia as he scolded. However, in the next moment, Cornelia raised her hand and patted Gilbert's shoulder. She stared at Count Augustus and said, "Count, if there is anything, you can follow me back to the office to discuss it in detail. Such an abrupt action is against the nobility of the Britannia Empire." Cornelia's words immediately caused the nobles who were blocking the door to look at each other in dismay. They subconsciously took a few steps back and made way for Cornelia. As the leader, Augustus's expression did not change. He still maintained the attitude of a good old man. He slightly leaned to the side and made way. "The governor is right. It's my fault." A small conflict was resolved. However, an even greater conflict had crossed the red line that was about to erupt. "Speak, Count and everyone, why have you come here today?" After returning to the office, Cornelia raised her hand and had all the attendants except for Gilbert and her adjutant, Dalton, leave the office. Then, he sat down and calmly waited for Count Augustus to speak. "Governor, may I ask if Department Q was established by the governor himself?" Augustus didn't speak. Instead, a small noble standing in the crowd stepped out and asked after bowing to Cornelia. "Yes. I ordered it. Is there a problem?" Cornelia's answer was very straightforward. Cornelia's straightforwardness caused the nobles to be at a loss of what to do. In the communication between these nobles, everything was usually accompanied by wrangling. Even when the late third Prince Clovis interacted with nobles like them, it was the same. However, Cornelia was so straightforward and frankly admitted that she was the one who ordered the establishment of Department Q. Then, what is the function of Department Q? Another middle-aged man wearing a white noble's attire and a series of medals on his left chest asked Cornelia with an arrogant expression. Upon seeing this person, Cornelia immediately recognized him. No, it should be the family background behind this person. It was the famous Turinus family with outstanding military achievements. However, this middle-aged man in front of her was the most useless third son of this family, Panduras K. Turinus. As the son of a famous family with outstanding military achievements, not only did he not go to the battlefield to kill the enemy, but he was also intoxicated in the world of sensual pleasures. All day long, he wore the medals that his parents fought for with their blood and sweat. He was just like a clown. Thinking of this, Cornelia couldn't help but snort coldly and said in a cold voice, "Viscount Panduras, Department Q's current duty is to deal with the Black Knight Order that openly rebelled against the Empire in the hostage kidnapping incident not long ago. Is there a problem? Black Knight Order?" As soon as Cornelia's words left her mouth, it caused a lot of discussion among the nobles. During this period of time, the existence of the Black Knight Order made the nobles feel a fear that they had never experienced before. No matter how strict the defenses were, they would be breached by the mysterious Black Knight Order, leaving behind many corpses that were punished in the name of justice. In the midst of the discussion, Count Augustus slowly asked, "Governor, is it worth the trouble?" The corner of Cornelia's mouth raised slightly, and she said indifferently, "Whether it's worth it or not, it's not up to me to decide. According to the reports gathered after the multiple attacks, the Black Knight Order's goal is clear and stable." Cornelia opened the drawer of her desk, took out a document, and placed it on the table. She said word by word, "This is the first mission that Department Q completed last night. I wonder if anyone is interested in reading it?" This, as soon as last night was mentioned, the nobles all looked at Augustus. Whether it was Cornelia, Augustus, or even themselves, they all knew that they were just supporting characters. Today's main characters could only be Cornelia and Count Augustus. "Your Highness, what do you mean by this?" Count Augustus said slowly. "The private property of the Empire's nobles should be protected by the Empire's laws. Why does the Governor's Department Q dare to break into the private property of the nobles and trample on the Empire's laws?" Empire's laws. As soon as she heard this word, Cornelia laughed instead of being angry. "Count, you must be joking. How can a warehouse that hides a large number of illegal drugs be protected by the Empire's laws? I wonder if Count Augustus can explain to me which part of the Empire's laws, which part of the law states that illegal drugs are protected by the Empire's laws." Cornelia's expression quickly turned cold, making the nobles take a step back subconsciously. It wasn't until just now that these nobles realized that Cornelia Elia Britannia, the Empire's princess who galloped on the battlefield, wasn't what they imagined, a weak woman who stayed in the back and ascended to the legendary realm with the help of the Night Guards. Earl Augustus also gradually lost his benevolent face and became more and more ferocious. However, just as he was about to explode, he suddenly calmed down. "Governor is right. It's my lack of discipline that allowed my subordinates to take advantage of the loophole and almost caused a disaster. No matter how the governor punishes me, I, Augustus J. Augustus, have no complaints." Count Augustus's performance made Cornelia murderous, but there was nothing she could do. Although Ray Minkai led Department Q to seize a large number of illegal drugs, it couldn't become the key evidence to bring down these crazy blood-sucking nobles entrenched in the 11th District. Well, thank you very much for Count Augustus's deep sense of justice. Let's call it a day. I'll send the results to Count Augustus's mansion. Yes, I've offended you today. Please forgive me, Governor. In the future, I ask the Governor to move forward hand in hand with us for the stability and prosperity of the 11th District. After a confrontation, both sides made concessions. Looking at the back of Count Augustus leading many nobles out of the government hall, Cornelia's face became colder and colder. If she rashly handed over the 11th District to Euphemia now, she was afraid that it wouldn't be a good thing. Cornelia was very clear about her sister Euphemia's personality. But she knew that it was difficult for Euphemia to deal with these nobles, who were already a pain in the ass. Dalton, in the name of the Governor, praise Department Q and hope that they will continue to work hard. In addition, if the mission requires it, you can request to cooperate with the personal guards. Adjutant Dalton slightly bowed and replied, "Yes, Your Highness." The praise from the Governor's mansion was quickly passed to Ray Minkai and the others. "Wow. It seems that the Governor thinks highly of you." Looking at the rewards sent in the name of the Governor's mansion, Royd looked at the calm Ray Minkai in surprise. Ray Minkai walked to the table, raised his hand to pick up the champagne placed in the ice water, shook it, and smiled. "This isn't a prize, Royd. This is a death sentence." "Death sentence?" Sachel blinked and asked with some confusion, "Why do you say that?" Ray Minkai chuckled, unscrewed the cork of the champagne, poured the wine into the glass, and looked at Veretta. "Veretta, you say it." "Yes." Veretta nodded, took a deep breath, and slowly said, "This morning, Count Augustus led many nobles to block Governor Cornelia and her party at the entrance of the government office. Then, in the governor's office, Governor Cornelia and Count Augustus had a small conflict. The result was that Count Augustus compromised and gave away these prizes." "Oh, if that was the case, then this was really a death sentence. It seems that your new job isn't a good thing." Royd, who understood the situation, gradually had a playful smile on his face. He and Sachel knew about Ray Minkai's past, as well as the reason for Gon's death. Now that the situation was developing, it was unknowingly moving in a certain direction. Not a good thing? Not necessarily. For me, it's a very good job. Ray Minkai raised his glass and drank the wine, pausing between each word as he spoke. Chapter 23. Move out. Move out. Move out again. With Cornelia's acquiescence, under the leadership of Ray Minkai, in the first battle, with the defeat of Count Augustus as the announcement of its birth, Department Q attacked everywhere. They captured all the prey they targeted, tore apart the crimes that the prey wanted to hide, and announced them through the news channels controlled by Cornelia. For a time, the momentum of Department Q overwhelmed the momentum established by the Black Knight Regiment not long ago and replaced it as the hero in the hearts of many honorary Britannians. Of course, this was just the thought of most honorary Britannians. For other honorary Britannians who still retained the idea of restoring their country and 11 who could only struggle to survive in the slums, the existence of Department Q was just the pawns of those nobles. In fact, Ray Minkai did not deny or admit this statement. In the hearts of insiders, Department Q was indeed a pawns. It was established by the new governor, Cornelia, to clean up the parasites and viruses in District 11. As the momentum of Department Q became more and more vast, the conflicts between them and the Black Knight Regiment began to become more frequent. In the past week, Department Q had encountered the Black Knight Regiment at least 3 times. When they jointly carried out operations against the same target, there were records of encounters and battles. In the battles, Department Q and the Black Knight Regiment each had their own victories and defeat. Perhaps out of caution, both sides only knew when to stop and did not engage in more intense conflicts or even fight to the death. This is the latest information. Veretta, who was already familiar with the assistant's work, sent a sorted-out piece of information to Ray Minkai as usual. But in the next moment, Veretta looked at Ray Minkai, who had already changed into a driver's suit, in surprise. What are you doing? It's time to move out. Veretta, if you continue to stay in the office or in the command vehicle, I'm afraid Royd will be angry. Ray Minkai smiled and said mischievously. Before Ray Minkai finished speaking, Royd's voice came from outside the door. Yes. If Sir Kay forgot that he was the test pilot for Lancelot, I would be happy to let our knight remember. Following the ever-off-key voice, Royd's cynical smiling face peeked in from outside the door. Royd, you came at the right time. We can use Lancelot for the next mission. Ray Minkai nodded and took the document from Veretta's hand. He patted the document and said, That would be great. Lancelot's condition had been adjusted to the most perfect state. Royd clapped his hands when he heard that Lancelot could once again participate in a real battle. However, Ray Minkai's next sentence made Royd speechless for a while. Really? But why did Lancelot's cherry stone suddenly lose its activity during the hostage situation? Royd opened his mouth and his face gradually revealed a distressed expression. You rascal! It's fine if you didn't mention it. The moment you mentioned it, I started to suspect if there was a problem with the design. There were actually 2 incidents where the cherry stone lost its activity for no reason. Royd kept on pulling his hair and shouting. Ray Minkai, who knew the reason, shook his head helplessly. He couldn't possibly say that Lancelot's cherry stone was actually eaten by a mysterious white cat, right? If he said that, Royd would probably be the first to fight Ray Minkai. Alright. In fact, the cherry stone is also one of Lancelot's components. It's normal for it to be changed more frequently. Royd, the Lancelot that you created is 3 times better than Sunderland. Ray Minkai went forward and patted Royd's shoulder and comforted Royd. TSK. I didn't expect to be comforted by you. Royd glanced at Ray Minkai and quickly pulled himself together. His usual cynical expression appeared on his face again. Yes, Lancelot was created by me in order to create the real nightmare. That's good. Let's start the mission. Department Q was dispatched once again. However, this time, their target wasn't in the concession area, but the slums around Shinjuku. We're in Shinjuku again. This time, the target is in Shinjuku? Cecil, who was checking the system, looked at the dilapidated scenery outside the window and immediately realized that they had left the concession area and entered the slums. Yes. Department Q seems to have received a tip-off that there will be an illegal drug trade in the slums of Shinjuku tonight. Royd, who was standing on the side, nodded and told him the information he just received from Ray Minkai. Since it's the slums, why bring the nightmare? Cecil didn't understand. Other than Lancelot, there were 3 more Sunderland. That's necessary. Royd smiled mysteriously. At this time, Ray Minkai stood in the command vehicle and looked at the 3 Sunderland pilots, including Veretta. Tonight's mission is a surprise attack mission. I believe everyone has already seen the mission's content. Yes. Our next opponent is the Britannia Empire's army. Don't worry. These troops are just parasites on the Holy Britannia Empire. So, there's no need to hold back. Understand? Yes. Your lord. The moment the needle pointed to 0, Department Q hidden in the shadows immediately moved. Under the leadership of the Nightmare team led by Lancelot, the soldiers quickly rushed to the ruins that were 500 meters away from them. At this moment, the dark clouds in the sky gently drifted away, revealing the moon that was hidden behind them. The dreamy moonlight scattered on the ruins. Observation post. Be careful. The moment the moonlight scattered, Ray Minkai's eyes lit up and immediately stopped everyone's movements through the communication device. Immediately after, the captain in charge of commanding the infantry raised his right hand and continued to make a few gestures. An infantry soldier with a sniper rifle stepped out of the crowd and quickly climbed up the building next to them. He began to move toward the observation post discovered by Ray Minkai. Pooh! A gunshot that was suppressed by a silencer sounded. Move! Before the blood blossomed on the observation post dissipated, Lancelot was the first to rush out of the shadows and rush toward the ruins behind the observation post. The Sunderland, driven by Veretta and the others, followed closely behind. They covered the movement of the infantry and quickly rushed along the path opened by Lancelot. Enemy attack! Under the moonlight, the White Knight Lancelot was so dazzling and eye-catching. The observation post fell, but there were still hidden sentries hidden in the shadows. The moment Lancelot rushed out, the alarm went off. On top of the dilapidated high-rise buildings around them, soldiers with loaded guns appeared one after another. And in the ruins in front, 5 Sunderland rushed out from the shadows. In the blink of an eye, a storm of bullets rained down. Caught off guard, Department Q's infantry suffered casualties. But soon, under the cover of the Sunderland driven by Veretta and the others, the infantry finally retreated to cover and reorganized their formation. Lancelot, on the other hand, immediately rushed to the bunker and did not suffer any damage. But this posture made Ray Minkai slowly squint his eyes. This is an ambush? Veretta shouted in surprise. No. This is not an ambush targeted at us. Ray Minkai did not deny Veretta's words, but only corrected some of the content. Not targeted at us? We have already suffered casualties. The next moment, Veretta was suddenly shocked. Could it be targeted at the Black Knight Regiment? Yes. If they were targeting our Q division, they wouldn't have only sent 5 Sunderlands. Even though I'm just a nobody, Lancelot's performance is something that's real. Ray Minkai's eyes flashed coldly. Lancelot's right hand reached behind his back, and the variable Vari's rifle appeared in his hand. Then, Lancelot raised his left arm and the claw flew up. In the blink of an eye, the moment the claw broke through the wall of the building on the opposite side of the road, Lancelot's figure suddenly shot up into the sky and leaped across the street. Dang! The unique sound of the variable Vari's rifle firing continuously rang out. Powerful bullets tore through the night sky and swept across the street towards the Sunderland that was charging towards Veretta and the others. Boom! 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 In an instant, amidst the explosions, the Sunderland that wanted to take advantage of the successful sneak attack and eliminate Department Q in one go paid a heavy price. They were either blown up on the spot or caught in the explosion and lost their limbs. The pilots had no choice but to activate the emergency escape system and abandon the aircraft. By the time Lancelot retracted his claw and landed on the street, other than Veretta's Sunderland, there was only the enemy's Sunderland left on the street. You can't just rely on a sneak attack to finish me off. As Ray Minkai spoke coldly, Lancelot raised the rifle in his hand and fired a bullet at the Sunderland. Boom! When the enemy's Sunderland exploded and turned into a fireball, Veretta and the others led the reorganized infantry and rushed out of cover. They swept through the enemy hiding in the buildings on both sides of the street like a tornado. However, just as the operation was about to be completed, a strange movement suddenly came from the depths of the ruins. Boom! Accompanied by a loud explosion, a red-painted Glasgow broke through the wall and appeared in front of Ray Minkai and the others. Following behind Glasgow was a group of black-clothed figures. In front of these figures in black, a figure attracted Ray Minkai's attention. 0. Chapter 24. 0. It's the Black Knight Squad. As soon as the members of Department Q saw the faces of the group of people who had suddenly rushed into the battlefield, they immediately turned their muzzles and fired a volley of bullets. The red Glasgow reacted quickly and used itself as a shield. After blocking the first wave of bullets for 0 and the Black Knight Squad, it covered them as they retreated behind cover not far away. Everyone, stop attacking. Ray Minkai ordered his men to stop attacking the Black Knight Squad. He then turned his attention to the hole that the Red Glasgow Squad had created. A few seconds later, Ray Minkai gave another order. Infantry, surround the hole. Sunderland, take up shooting positions. Everyone, wait for my command. Veretta hesitated for a moment when she heard that the Black Knight Squad was going to be spared. However, she quickly regained her composure and followed the order. She led the Sunderland squad to take up the best shooting positions. What made Veretta feel strange was that even though Ray Minkai had given the order to spare the Black Knight Squad, the Black Knight Squad, who should have fled, stayed where they were. From the looks of it, they still wanted to stay. What's going on? Whether it was Ray Minkai or Zero's actions, Veretta was confused. Soon, her confusion was cleared up by the sound of movement coming from the hole. Sunderland. The mechanical body that was slowly approaching from the shadow of the hole should be Sunderland. Even though it was painted black and had some external modifications, Veretta could still recognize it. Everyone, attack. The next second, Ray Minkai shouted. In an instant, gunshots were heard. Whether it was the infantry's submachine guns or Sunderland's firearms, they were all roaring. Bullets of various sizes whizzed through the air like a storm and enveloped the Sunderland that was slowly walking out of the hole. Ding 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 ding. What happened next shocked everyone. The moment the bullet storm hit the Black Sunderland, it was as if it hit an impenetrable wall, and it bounced off in all directions in futile. Veretta, fire the howitzers. Ray Minkai's voice was heard again. Veretta and the other Sunderland pilots immediately changed their shooting mode to the howitzers. The howitzers installed under the Sunderland's left arm folded forward and locked onto the target. Fire. Following Valletta's order, the 3 Sunderland mechs continued to fire their grenades without stopping for even a moment. Boom. 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 In the midst of the gunshots, grenades hit the body of the Black Sunderland and set off a series of violent explosions. Fireballs thick smoke dust in the blink of an eye, the Black Sunderland was engulfed. Did it work? Looking at the smoke coming out of the hole, everyone stopped attacking and cautiously waited for the next change. Other than Nightmare, everyone retreat to a distance of 300 meters. Following Ray Minkai's voice, Lancelot came to the front of Veretta's Sunderland and raised his rifle. Be careful. That strange Sunderland is not damaged. Ray Minkai's words shocked Veretta and the others. The smoke and dust dispersed. The black Sunderland was still slowly driving out of the hole. When it was exposed under the moonlight, this strange black Sunderland finally stopped. It was about 50 meters away from Lancelot, and they quietly looked at each other. Virum. The sound of high-speed wheels exploding broke the silence. The black Sunderland took the lead and attacked Lancelot. Under the moonlight, two black shadows flew over and attacked Lancelot in a straight line. Lancelot raised his left hand, and the unique light of the energy shield flashed and blocked the black shadow. The black shadow that lost its speed revealed its true appearance. It was the black Sunderland's hook. The hook that failed didn't seem to shake the black Sunderland's will to attack. Instead, it gradually increased its speed. Attack! Cover Lancelot! When Veretta saw the battle, she immediately ordered to cover Lancelot. Da-da-da-da! The sound of bullets whistling through the air was heard again. However, just like the previous volley, the Sunderland's bullets didn't hit the black Sunderland. It was as if they hit a wall, and the bullets ricocheted in all directions. Veretta, that's enough. You guys retreat too. Leave the rest to me. When he saw that the Sunderland's attacks were ineffective, Ray Minkai made a wise decision. But, retreat. This Sunderland is very strange. You guys can't handle it. As he spoke, Lancelot raised the rifle in his hand and fired 3 consecutive shots at the black Sunderland. However, the black Sunderland dodged all of the shots with strange maneuvers. However, Lei Minkai used this opportunity to discover some clues. The black Sunderland, that was fearless and could even ignore the bullets fired by normal firearms, actually dodged the bullets fired by Lancelot's rifle. Can the rifle hurt you? Ray Minkai's eyes flashed. Lancelot's left hand reached to his waist, and a radiant vibrasword appeared in his hand. At this time, Lancelot's right hand was holding a variable-type Vari's rifle, and his left hand was holding a radiant vibrasword. With both weapons in hand, Lancelot instantly burst out with maximum speed and attacked the black Sunderland like a gust of wind. Swoosh! The black figure attacked again, but it didn't make Lancelot retreat at all. This time, Ray Minkai, who had seen through the black figure's true identity, moved his left hand, and Lancelot swung the radiant vibrasword downward. The black figure was cut in half and fell to the ground. When he looked closely, he saw that it was the black Sunderland's claw. Swoosh! As the wind blew, Lancelot's high-speed drive wheel changed direction. Lancelot twisted his body and swung the radiant vibrasword in his left hand backward. Gotcha! A crisp sound was heard, and the black figure fell to the ground. Sure enough, it was still the claw that was cut off. Whoosh! The wind blew, and a thick black figure shrouded Lancelot. F***ck, be careful! Swoosh! As soon as Veretta's warning was heard, a black figure suddenly swept across the night sky and sent the black figure above Lancelot flying. Ray Minkai looked back and saw that it was Red Glasgow from the Black Knight Regiment who came to the rescue. White Knight, how about we work together? In front of Red Glasgow, Zero said. You guys are the ones who created the Black Sunderland, right? Why do you want me to clean up your mess? Lei Minkai glanced at the Black Sunderland that was sent flying and crashed into a dilapidated building, burying it in the rubble. He snorted coldly. We caused it? Stop joking. White Knight. Although we are enemies, our goal is the same, isn't it? Zero's voice was very calm, so calm that it made Ray Minkai feel uncomfortable. This was because he now understood who those ambushes were prepared for. He just didn't expect that the result would be Ray Minkai and the others. The same? What a joke. Zero. I still haven't settled the score with you for the crimes that you and those ridiculous knights have committed. Lei Minkai sneered and replied rudely. Weakness. The weakness of that strange Sunderland. How about it? Zero threw out his trump card. Weakness? You want to force me to work with you? No, no. I only hope to use this information in exchange for our departure. That's all. Zero's helmet shook a little. It was obvious that he had noticed the soldiers of Department Q that quietly surrounded this area. You don't want to work with me anymore? Zero. No. Right now we, the Black Knight, are the weak. In order to survive, we are willing to pay a price in exchange for a chance to leave. Zero stepped forward and extended his right hand to Lancelot, slowly clenching his fist. Speak. Rei Minkai's answer was very simple. The cockpit. If the White Knight can penetrate the cockpit of that strange Sunderland, then it is very possible to stop it. As if to make Rei Minkai believe, Zero took 3 steps forward and said in a low voice, When this strange Sunderland started, I saw with my own eyes that the pilot drank the illegal drug refrain. That's why he became like this. Illegal drug refrain? Is that so? Just as Rei Minkai was enlightened by Zero's reminder, the black Sunderland that was buried under the rubble exploded again. In the midst of the smoke and dust, the black Sunderland suddenly jumped out of the rubble and flew towards Lancelot from mid-air. Facing the attack from the sky, Lancelot once again threw the variable Vari's rifle aside and reached for his waist to pull out the radiation vibrasword. With both swords in hand, Lancelot did not retreat. Instead, he jumped on the spot and flew towards the black Sunderland. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 sword flashes appeared and the black Sunderland's hands and feet were cut off from top to bottom. Then, Lancelot raised his left hand and the hook on his forearm suddenly flew up and stabbed into the black Sunderland's chest. Immediately after, Lancelot's left hand pulled downwards, and the black Sunderland was dragged along by the hook and fell heavily to the ground from mid-air. Clang! A cold light broke through the smoke and directly pierced into the cockpit of the black Sunderland. In the next moment, the black Sunderland seemed to have lost its color. After quickly turning from black to white, it went silent. As expected, looking at the strange appearance of the black Sunderland, Zero's eyes showed that she had expected it. Before Zero could speak, a huge figure accompanied by a gust of wind landed in front of Zero. Zero! Without looking, Zero knew that the person standing in front of her was Lancelot. Calm down. Zero raised her hand to stop the Black Knight squad that wanted to rush up to rescue the Black Sunderland and calmly looked up at Lancelot. The information is correct. Then, the deal is established. Established. But now, the Black Knight squad must leave here immediately. Rei Minkai's voice came from Lancelot's cockpit. Understood. Thank you very much. Also, in the depths of the cave there will be something that your Q department and even Cornelia will be interested in. This is also to repay the kindness of letting the Black Knight squad go. Zero, who was at a disadvantage from beginning to end, did not show a trace of fear. Chapter 25. In a chemistry laboratory at Ashford College. As the first ray of sunlight shone into this chemistry laboratory, which was rarely used compared to other chemistry laboratories, a figure pushed open the door and walked in slowly with a red bottle. After the figure looked at the layout of the chemistry laboratory, he walked straight to the table on the right side of the laboratory that was full of experimental equipment. The moment the liquid in the red bottle was extracted by the figure, the busy chemical experiment began. Time passed quickly in the process of the focused experiment. From the first ray of sunlight to the middle of the day, the analysis of the liquid in the red bottle had only just finished the preliminary stage. Oh, Leluxi, I didn't expect you to do chemistry experiments. At this time, as the laboratory door was pushed open, a cold voice sounded. See, I'm just curious. After putting down the test tube in his hand, Luxio turned his head and looked at the witch who walked into the laboratory. Curious? Yes. No matter who it is, after seeing the Sunderland, they will have the same curiosity. With her long green hair fluttering in the air, the witch walked to Luxio's side and looked at the test tubes filled with red and green liquid on the table with interest. Then, Luxio, what's the result? Did you find it? Luxio smiled self-deprecatingly and openly admitted his powerlessness. How is that possible? Although I've read relevant experimental knowledge from books, it's just knowledge, not experience. To understand what's in this bottle? In the end, we still need professionals to analyze it. C.C. narrowed his eyes and looked at the red bottle in Luxio's hand for a while. He then turned his head and asked Luxio, "Do you want those people to help you?" How is that possible? They're just soldiers. They can't do this kind of professional knowledge. Luxio snorted and put the red bottle on the table. He began to clean up the test tubes and poured the liquid in them into an iron bucket on the side. Then, where are the professionals you mentioned? C.C. sat down on the table and asked while watching Luxio pack up. Not now. But soon, they will deliver themselves to us. Luxio casually took the alcohol lamp that was placed on another table and turned it on. Then, he poured more than half a bottle into the iron bucket that was filled with red and green liquid. And then, before Luxio could light the match, C.C. suddenly snatched the match from Luxio's hand. Do you want to die? Luxio. C.C. looked down at the match and then looked at Lelouch mockingly. As expected, you lack experience in certain matters. The chemistry lab is not a place where you can light a fire whenever you want. Especially what was in the iron bucket. Don't you know? Luxio stared blankly for a moment before a bitter smile appeared on his face. I'm sorry. I was thinking about something just now. A few minutes later, on the rooftop of the teaching building, Lelouch and C. quietly looked at the iron barrel that was burning fiercely. Luxio. The storm has begun. C.'s voice sounded faintly in the breeze. Yes, it had begun. But now, the one who should be troubled is not me, but Cornelia. Luxio raised his head and looked in the direction of Shinjuku. Yes, Cornelia was more troubled than Luxio when it came to illegal drugs. Cornelia, who originally thought that the illegal drugs were just a type of psychotropic drug, could no longer sit still after receiving the latest report from Department Q. She led her personal guards to Shinjuku again, to the area where Rei Minkai and the others fought last night. In this area that was heavily surrounded by soldiers, Cornelia brought the captain of her personal guards, Gilbert, and her adjutant, Dalton, to Rei Minkai and Royd. Behind Rei Minkai and Royd was the wreckage of the Black Sunderland that they successfully killed last night with the information provided by Zero. This is the strange Sunderland that you were talking about? Cornelia glanced at Rei Minkai and Royd, then turned to look at the White Sunderland. Yes, Governor General. In last night's battle, after it was defeated by Lancelot, it became like this. Royd stopped smiling and looked at things with a serious expression, which was rare for him. Like this? Is it petrified? Cornelia furrowed her brows. Just as she was about to walk forward and touch Sunderland's remains, Gilbert took a big stride forward and blocked her path. Governor General, be careful. We don't know if there are other problems with this Sunderland. The loyal Gilbert had a serious expression and looked sharply at Royd. Why are you looking at me? This thing is already dead. No matter how you look at it, it is already dead. Royd shrugged and took a step forward. He reached out to touch the Sunderland as he spoke. Yes, Governor General, after I drove Lancelot to kill it, this Sunderland has fallen into a state similar to petrification. Look here. Rei Minkai took over Royd's topic and pointed at a spot near the ground below the wreckage. Cornelia and the others looked at where Rei Minkai pointed and found a gap. Judging from the traces left on the surface, it seemed that someone had knocked off a piece of it. Governor General, please look. This is a sample knocked off from above. Royd took a sealed transparent bag from Sihil and passed it to Gilbert. Gilbert checked it a few times. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he passed it to Cornelia. This is really stone? Cornelia touched the sample through the bag and looked at the wreckage of Sunderland in shock. If someone had told Cornelia that the Sunderland equipped by the Empire was made of stone before today, Cornelia would have been the first to order the execution. However, the scene before her eyes made Cornelia believe that after the Sunderland was killed, it strangely turned from metal to stone. After Cornelia returned the transparent bag to Sihil, she looked at Royd and asked, "Did you find out what happened?" "We did not find anything. The only thing we know is that the strange change in Sunderland is most likely related to illegal drugs." Royd gave Ray Minkai a look. "Governor General, during last night's battle, we encountered the Black Knight Regiment and obtained some information from Zero. The reason why Sunderland became like this is because the knight who piloted it drank a bottle of illegal drugs before entering Sunderland." Ray Minkai calmly told him the information he obtained from Zero. "Zero, you encountered the Black Knight Regiment last night?" Dalton, who had been silent all this while, asked. "Yes." Ray Minkai nodded and continued. "In fact, when we entered this area, we encountered an ambush. The target of this ambush should have been the Black Knight Regiment. In the end, we caught up to them." "Ambush?" "Then, when Department Q was dealing with the ambush, the Black Knight Regiment took the opportunity to enter the cave and discovered this Sunderland." Cornelia had already noticed that there were many people moving things in and out of the cave. Moreover, as Ray Minkai's assistant, Veretta, was standing in front of the cave, directing the people moving things. "Yes. After the battle, we found some very strange medicines in the depths of the cave." Ray Minkai frowned, but he couldn't find a suitable word to explain what they found. Let me explain." Royd pushed up his glasses. "Although we only did a rough inspection, we can come to a conclusion." Royd's words attracted the attention of Cornelia and the others. "Although the inspection results show that the illegal drugs found in the depths of the cave are similar to the illegal drugs we have been pursuing before, there are some ingredients that we can't analyze at the moment." "Couldn't analyze?" Cornelia asked. "Yes. With our current technical means, we can barely detect it, but we can't analyze it. Therefore, we don't know anything about its structure and function." Royd spread out his hands and said helplessly, "In the end, I'm just a rookie when it comes to chemical analysis. If necessary, I hope the governor can transfer a group of skilled chemical technicians from the country to analyze these samples." I understand." After Cornelia nodded, she looked back at Ray Minkai and said, "Although we didn't see the report of the encounter between Department Q and the Black Knight Regiment, we'll ignore it this time." "Yes. Thank you, Governor." Ray Minkai just thanked her, but he was stopped by Cornelia. Next, I'll lead the guards to the sea and cut off the channel of illegal drugs flowing into Area 11. Department Q's actions will be the same." "Yes, Governor." Cornelia left. After giving out the orders, Cornelia left Shinjuku with her personal guards and returned to the settlement. She began to make arrangements for the next step of the operation. A few days later, Ray Minkai and the others, who had cleaned up the broken battlefield and returned to the concession, received a message before they could breathe a sigh of relief. Cornelia took the guards to battle. Now, Area 11 was temporarily led by Deputy Governor Euphemia Lee Britannia. "Oh, I'm afraid the Deputy Governor is going to have a hard time. After all, the powerful governor is going to battle." After Royd finally got rid of the investigation work that he hated very much, he happily inspected Lancelot while saying, "Don't worry about it." "Royd, how can you say that?" Sihil, who was sitting next to him, frowned and glanced at Royd. Oh, I didn't notice." Royd let out a strange cry and glanced at Lei Minkai, who was signing the document, intentionally or unintentionally. Ahem. Royd, are you free now? Veretta, who was still holding a pile of documents in her arms, coughed softly and attracted Royd's attention, lest he disturb Ray Minkai's work. Originally, Veretta suggested to Ray Minkai to return to the independent office to work. Who knew Ray Minkai, on the grounds that he was not used to the office, ran back to the special mission station, pulled a table next to Lancelot, and started working. This situation not only gave Veretta a headache, but also opened the eyes of Royd and the others. Veretta, beautiful lady. Is there anything I can help you with? Royd blinked and said with a smile. Can you help me adjust Sunderland? I'm afraid my Sunderland won't be able to meet the needs of future battles. Veretta remembered the situation when they fought against Black Sunderland. Whether it was machine guns or howitzers, none of Sunderland's main equipment could cause any damage. If this continued, Veretta might become a powerless bystander, watching Lancelot fight alone on the front line. Adjust? Royd rolled his eyes, shook his head, and sighed. Although I can help you adjust Sunderland, Sunderland's potential is there. No matter how much I adjust it, I'm afraid it won't be able to meet your need. What? Veretta was stunned, and she didn't know what to do. At this time, Ray Minkai just finished signing the last document. He put down the pen and looked up at Royd. Royd, I remember that Lancelot should have a few spare parts. What? You can't do that. F***ck. Let me tell you. Those are Lancelot's spare parts. The budget is all there. As soon as Lloyd heard that Lay Minkai was thinking about the spare parts, he immediately jumped up and said. However, Lay Minkai said confidently, Royd, I'm not going to give you a chance. Lancelot will eventually mass-produce it. Instead of collecting data when the time comes, why don't we follow Lancelot's standards and start mass production experiments in advance? Facing Ray Minkai's words that made him speechless, Royd was silent. Seeher, who was sitting at the side, rolled his eyes and seemed to think that Ray Minkai's suggestion was quite feasible. Based on the combat data that Lancelot had collected so far, this was undoubtedly the best result in a real battle. But the only problem was with the pilot. It was important to note that not every pilot was like Lay Minkai, who could still be alive and kicking even after a few days, even if there were a few holes in his body. Therefore, when mass production was carried out, it was necessary to collect balance data. Otherwise, if they blindly pursued the strength of Ray Minkai when he piloted Lancelot, it would be a dead end. After thinking about it, Seeher reached out and poked Royd's waist. Royd, I think Ray Minkai's suggestion is quite good. Royd's mouth twitched. He looked at his assistant, Seeher, and then looked at Ray Minkai, who was calm and seemed particularly confident. In the end, Royd nodded. Okay. But, F***ck, there are only a few spare parts. If something happens to Lancelot again, you have to be mentally prepared. However, a sudden voice interrupted everyone's discussion. If it's possible, I can bear the cost of this knight's body. How about it? Everyone turned their heads and saw a young girl dressed in a dignified and luxurious white robe. She had soft pink hair and a beautiful face. She was escorted by her entourage as she walked into the Special Task Forces encampment from the outside. Her Royal Highness. Royd and others were stunned and immediately stepped forward and saluted. Greetings, Deputy Governor. Everyone, please rise. The third princess, the Deputy Governor of District 11, Euphemia smiled slightly and motioned for everyone to get up. Then she looked at Ray Minkai. I've heard about it. Can I do something for Department Q? Ray Minkai looked at the princess' smiling face and couldn't help but be in a trance. He raised his right hand, stroked his chest, and said respectfully, Of course, Her Royal Highness. Chapter 26. It was still the same familiar street. It was still the same familiar people. The only difference was that around the streets, There were pairs of eyes in the corners. Some were alert, some were scrutinizing, and some were casually observing the surroundings, observing the people coming and going. And the ultimate goal of these gazes was the man and woman strolling on the street, observing how the people around them spent the day. UFFI. Come here. Ray Minkai's gaze seemed to inadvertently glance at the bakery on the right, then took 2 ice creams and returned to Euphemia's side. This is ice cream. Euphemia saw the ice cream in Ray Minkai's hand and said with some surprise. You haven't eaten it before? Ray Minkai blinked, a little surprised by Euphemia's surprise. Well, I've eaten one. But my etiquette teacher doesn't allow me to eat ice cream often, saying that it will affect my posture. After Euphemia thanked him, she reached out and took the ice cream. She carefully tasted it, and a sweet happiness appeared on her face. Seeing Euphemia, who had always been dignified and elegant, reveal an expression like an ordinary girl, Ray Minkai couldn't help but smile. Indeed, frequent and large amounts of ice cream would indeed lead to tooth decay and obesity. In order to ensure the dignity and elegance of the princesses, it was natural for the court etiquette teacher to make such a request. But today, let Euphemia temporarily get rid of her identity as a princess and experience an ordinary girl's day. Kay, you're not eating? Noticing that Ray Minkai seemed to be distracted, Euphemia softly called out. I'm just thinking about something. Nothing. UFFI. Ray Minkai shook his head, smiled at Euphemia, and asked, By the way, where do you want to go today? If it's outside the concession, there's nothing I can do. Euphemia nodded. Well, I know. Because of the last incident, I can't leave the concession for the time being. So, I want to go to the factory today to take a look. Factory? Ray Minkai frowned. He thought about it and finally agreed with Euphemia's idea. After all, compared to the dilapidated city outside the concession, the factory area was still much safer, even with a large number of Britannians coming in and out to work. After making the decision, Ray Minkai didn't waste any more time. After secretly notifying the members of Department Q who were guarding the surroundings, he walked toward the factory area with Euphemia. At this moment, it was lunch break. The workers working in the factory area were reminded by the lunch break bell. They walked out of the factory in groups and rushed to the nearby cafeteria. The sight of the sea of people surprised Euphemia, who had never seen such a scene before. So many people. Are they all workers? Ray Minkai looked around and found that the agents of Department Q were already in position. After looking around vigilantly, he nodded. Yes. This factory area is mainly responsible for the production of light textile industrial products, so the recruits are mainly Britannians. As Ray Minkai said, he took Euphemia's small hand and led her to a quieter observation deck to avoid being hit by more and more people. Let's do it here. UFFI. There are more and more people below. Euphemia didn't say anything. She just looked at Ray Minkai's hand. Ray Minkai was still holding her small hand. When he saw Euphemia's gaze, Ray Minkai was stunned for a moment. Then he quickly let go of Euphemia's small hand and laughed. Sorry, I forgot. But Euphemia didn't care about it. Instead, she showed a gentle smile. No. Don't worry. This is the first time I've experienced this feeling. That gentle smile made Ray Minkai absent-minded for a moment. It was as if some indescribable feelings were about to surge out of his chest. But in the next moment, Ray Minkai suppressed the surge with his willpower and calmly nodded. Moreover, in this delicate moment, a movement inadvertently saved Ray Minkai. That is? What's going on? Euphemia's doubtful gaze went past Ray Minkai and fell on the circle of people not far away. It seems like they're fighting? When Silver Mask turned to face the crowd, Ray Minkai also heard the curses that Breeze brought to his ears. Not good. Euphemia had just blurted out these words when she suddenly stopped speaking. Because she finally remembered her identity, and it wasn't suitable for her to rashly step forward. But Ray Minkai had another way. He secretly gestured to the agents of Department Q who were watching over here. The agents nodded and turned to leave. Using the authority of Department Q, the police in charge of the security of the factory area were dispatched. Sure enough, in less than 3 minutes, 3 Glasgow helicopters painted in the style of the police rushed out from the other side of the factory with nearly 100 armed police armed with explosion-proof equipment. Bang! 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 The moment several large tear gas bombs, shot out by the Glasgow helicopters, landed in the crowd, the unbearable pungent gas was immediately released and quickly drowned the entire crowd. Then, armed with explosion-proof shields and batons, the police rushed into the smoke like a gust of wind. After dispersing or knocking down the crowd, they were dragged away by their teammates. Soon, the crowd of onlookers was dispersed, and the troublemakers were caught by the police. They were dragged out of the range of the tear gas and thrown to the other side of the street. Do you want to go up and take a look? UFFI. When Lei Minkai saw the agent who had just left to inform the police return, he gestured to him that someone wanted to see him. Or rather, he wanted to see the big shot who could make Department Q, who was at the peak of their power, personally come. After thinking for a while, Ray Minkai still shook his head. The answer was inevitable. As long as the person in charge here knew Euphemia's identity, then Euphemia's rare good mood would be shattered. Therefore, the agents of Department Q once again used their authority to burn the bridge after crossing the river. Ray Minkai couldn't help but find it funny when he saw the reluctance in the eyes of the person in charge when he left. After the agents confirmed that there was no one around to spy on the situation, the troublemakers were brought to Ray Minkai and Euphemia. This? How could you do this? Old man, are you okay? Euphemia could not help but shout angrily when she saw the old man covered in dust, with a head full of white hair and bruises all over his face, being supported by the agents. With Euphemia's gentle temperament, it was rare for her to explode in anger. This also proved how vicious the other group of brawny men who were forced to the ground by the agents were. What happened? Ray Minkai looked at the injuries on the old man's body and turned to ask his subordinate. Sir, the cause of the incident should be because the old man wanted to get his son's salary back. Salary back? Ray Minkai paused for a moment. He didn't expect to witness a salary back in person, and it was an old man who was asking for his salary back. But seeing that the old man didn't respond to Euphemia's question, Ray Minkai knew that he wouldn't be able to get the details out of him. Therefore, Ray Minkai set his eyes on the brawny men. In order to save time, Ray Minkai signaled his subordinates with his eyes. His subordinates nodded in understanding and silently pulled the brawny men into the small forest not far away. A few minutes later, the subordinates walked out of the forest with a hint of unhappiness on their faces. What a coward! The agents all looked down on the brawny men who only knew how to bully the weak and do evil. Then, they explained the details of the incident. It turned out that the old man's son worked in the factory here, and he was also a middle-level manager. Although it was hard work, he was able to ensure the livelihood of his family. But he never expected that his son would inexplicably be infected with a banned drug called Refrain not long ago. Just half a month ago, his son lost all of his family's assets and also lost his job. Now, in order to get back the last few months of his son's salary, the old man had no choice but to come forward and ask for his salary. In the end, the situation in front of them happened. With the agent's explanation, the situation became clear. No matter how she called out, the old man couldn't respond. Euphemia raised her head and looked at Ray Minkai. Her eyes were so determined and so angry. She lived in the palace since she was a child. She had always lived in luxury and was carefully taken care of by the maids. Her Royal Highness never thought that there would be such an unfair thing in the world. I understand. As you wish, Your Highness. Rei Minkai didn't need to ask to know what the gentle third princess was thinking. Inform that guy. Since he wants to see the big shot, then he has to show his sincerity. Rei Minkai's words were brought to the head of security, who was still regretting. In an instant, the regret on his face turned into a dilemma. But soon, he made a choice. Because he knew that if he dared to refuse, his position would be terminated. As long as one wasn't an idiot, one would know that in the 11th district, Department Q was in the limelight. Standing behind Department Q was the second princess, Cornelia Elie Britannia, who was known as the Witch. Half an hour later, accompanied by Department Q led by Rei Minkai, Euphemia, who appeared as the third princess and deputy governor, stood at the gate of the factory. There, dozens of people were kneeling. They were the people in charge of this factory. From top to bottom. I only have one question. Do you owe this old man's son his salary? Euphemia's face was cold, and she asked those people condescendingly. Your Royal Highness. Please listen to my explanation. When the fat pig-like man who was sweating profusely at the front tried to explain, Rei Minkai scolded him loudly. Shut up. What the deputy governor is asking now is not this. Under Rei Minkai's terrifying momentum, the fat pig was stiff, and his lips trembled as he nodded. Is that so? Then, the matter is clear. In the name of the third princess of the Britannia Empire, the deputy governor of the 11th district, Euphemia Lee Britannia, I order that all factories in the area immediately conduct a financial inspection and pay back all the owed wages within a week. Otherwise, I will ban any factory that violates this order in the name of the deputy governor of the 11th district. With the full support of Rei Minkai and Department Q, the third princess, Euphemia Lee Britannia, who had always been gentle, issued the first strict order since she arrived in the 11th district. Chapter 27. Euphemia's strict order was successfully carried out. Under the supervision of Department Q, no one dared to go against her orders. Even though Department Q had just been established not long ago, due to their previous achievements, none of the factory managers in this factory area dared to play tricks in the dark. Didn't they see that the nobles who stood behind them in the past all remained silent? But Euphemia couldn't be happy. As a member of the royal family, even if she was gentle by nature, she knew that some unspeakable things were hiding in the dark. Why? Standing in the office, Euphemia silently watched the ambulance carrying the old man leave and asked the masked man standing next to her. Perhaps it was because of the silver mask. For the first time, Euphemia thought that if she could take off the silver mask at that time, it would be a great thing. At least, she could see if the face under the mask was as angry as she was now. No reason. It's just benefits. Under the silver mask there was a calm face. Benefits? Just for benefits, an old man was forced to come here to ask for a salary and was beaten half to death? Euphemia shook her head. Her heart had not been able to calm down since she learned the truth. She, who had lived a luxurious life since she was a child, had never thought that humans would have such a difficult time surviving. Rei Minkai was silent for a while, then turned around, bowed slightly to Euphemia, and said, Your Highness, please come with me. Some things must be seen with your own eyes to have a deeper understanding. Rei Minkai's statement made Euphemia's heart sink. It seemed that what Rei Minkai was going to let her witness was not a good thing. However, even so, Her Royal Highness nodded resolutely. Good. Let me see everything you have to show me. Of course. Your Royal Highness. Rei Minkai responded in a deep voice. The sun set and the moon rose. When everyone thought that Her Royal Highness, who had been making a fuss all day, had returned to the governor's palace, the Royal Highness disguised herself as a member of Department Q and followed Rei Minkai to participate in the upcoming operation of Department Q. I didn't expect you to bring the deputy governor along. Veretta, who was coordinating the operation team, said to Ray Minkai with a bitter smile. No. It was just that the deputy governor wanted to see what kind of darkness existed in the land she was in charge of. Even if I don't agree, in the future, there will be someone who will let the deputy governor see it. Ray Minkai tightened the collar of his driving suit and said indifferently. In order to ensure Euphemia's safety, she stayed in the command vehicle after the operation began. She would only leave the command vehicle after the operation was over and Department Q had taken control of the situation. It's time. Everyone, begin the operation. Ray Minkai glanced at the clock, then opened the comms and gave the order. Under the cover of the night, Department Q came out in full force once again. In the dim light, a group of nervous people were quickly moving the goods stored in the basement out, one by one, into the trucks parked at the exit. Quick, quick, quick. Those damn dogs seem to have discovered this place. We must evacuate from here as soon as possible. Among the crowd, a middle-aged man who looked like a leader waved his arms and shouted loudly. Let's go. But didn't those lackeys cause a huge ruckus in the factory area this afternoon? My neighbors are talking about this. The others didn't quite agree with his statement. After all, in those rumors, even the third princess ran to the factory area and gave a strict order to make those black-hearted Britannia bosses pay all the debt. Idiot! What do you know? Do you know the origin of this matter? It was that old fart from Suzuki's family who went to ask for money and was beaten half to death by those black-hearted pig's dogs. Then, Department Q found out and caused this mess. The middle-aged man fiercely slapped the head of the person closest to him, spittle flying everywhere as he cursed loudly. Suzuki, that bastard! Not only does he owe me money, but he also caused me such a big trouble. When things calmed down, boom! Before the middle-aged man could scold to his heart's content, a roar suddenly exploded, followed by a violent tremor. What, boom! Another rumbling sound rang out. This time, it seemed to be even closer. Quick, run. Don't care about those goods. The middle-aged man who finally reacted trembled all over and took the lead to turn and run in the opposite direction of the explosion. At the same time, he didn't forget to shout to remind his men. Walla! Bang! Boom! Boom! With the sound of bottles being smashed and boxes being thrown on the ground, these outlaws who relied on selling illegal drugs in the past finally tasted the taste of impending doom. Boom! They didn't run far before the violent explosion swept over. Mixed in the violent shock wave, the rubble and debris swept the criminals who didn't have time to move to the ground in a short time, and the stench also filled this narrow space. Ta-ta-ta! Before the roar had completely dissipated, a series of messy but orderly footsteps came from afar into this narrow space that was ravaged by the explosion. Streaks of red light broke through the darkness amidst the flying dust and shone on the outlaws who had been knocked down by the rubble on the ground. Safe. All teams move separately according to the original plan. In the blink of an eye, heavily armed soldiers searched along the tunnel that was blasted open by the explosion in teams according to the original plan. Ta-ta-ta, ta-ta-ta. The sound of gunfire also became the main theme of the soldiers' search for this stronghold that hid countless criminals. In the command vehicle, Euphemia's small face was tense, and her hands involuntarily crossed and clenched. She was waiting for Ray Minkai to send back the rule that it was safe. Lieutenant Governor, don't worry. 4K and Q Department, this is just a routine mission. Sai Shur, who was monitoring the data feedback, saw that Euphemia seemed to be a little nervous and subconsciously comforted her. Is that so? Euphemia lowered her gaze and nodded. Then, the news that Euphemia was waiting for finally came back. However, Ray Minkai's face did not look good. Kay, are you hurt? The words of concern almost blurted out, and Euphemia's eyes revealed a trace of nervousness. No. Lieutenant Governor, there are some things here that I hope you can take a look at. But you must be prepared. Rei Minkai's voice was low and hoarse as if he was suppressing something. The puzzled Euphemia was received by the soldiers sent by Rei Minkai, and came to Rei Minkai's side from another clean tunnel. When Euphemia followed Rei Minkai's instructions and looked at the warehouse behind the door behind him, she was frightened by the horrifying scene in front of her, and took a few steps back. It was not until Rei Minkai supported her that she slowly woke up from the shock and looked back at Rei Minkai. "It's true, Your Highness." Rei Minkai gave a look to his subordinate beside him. His subordinate then brought a red bottle and a middle-aged man with a skinny face and a sloppy appearance. He didn't look like a human at all. "Your Highness, this is the illegal drug refrain that has spread among 11. Rei Minkai took the red bottle and showed it to Euphemia while saying, "This is refrain?" "Yes, Your Highness. Its power." Rei Minkai was silent for a moment and finally sighed. "Your Highness, please take a look at it with your own eyes." Then Rei Minkai ordered people to bring the middle-aged man over. "What is this?" "Ah! This is a miracle! This is a miracle! This is a miracle that belongs to me. Give it to me. I beg you, give it to me." Seeing the red bottle in Rei Minkai's hand, the skinny middle-aged man actually exerted a great force and struggled to break free, trying to snatch the red bottle from Rei Minkai's hand. "Calm down," Rei Minkai shouted, suppressing the middle-aged man. Then Rei Minkai shook the red bottle in front of him and said slowly, "As long as you answer my question, it is yours." "Good, good, good. Ask me, ask me. I'll tell you anything you ask. Even if you want my life, I'll give it to you. I only want my miracle." The middle-aged man's crazy obsession with refrain made Euphemia unable to bear to close her eyes. "Your Highness, don't close your eyes. This is the truth of District 11. Rei Minkai shouted, forcing Euphemia to open her eyes and face everything in front of her. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Rei Minkai shook the red bottle again. The sound of the liquid in the bottle made the middle-aged man's eyes widen, and he subconsciously swallowed several times. I am Suzuki Taro. I came here to buy a miracle. Look, look. I have money." Fortunately, that old fart went to ask for his salary, and was beaten half to death, and finally lay in the hospital. But this is also good. Anyway, he's going to die. I'll simply take out the medical expenses and use it to buy my miracle." As he spoke, the middle-aged man's skinny face showed a burst of complacency, and the content of his words made Euphemia angry again. "Hey!" Rei Minkai was stunned. The subordinates who were holding the middle-aged man were stunned. Don't know when Euphemia, with a face full of anger, had a broken bottle in her hand. And a few seconds ago, Euphemia, who burst out with a roar, snatched the red bottle from Rei Minkai's hand and smashed it on the middle-aged man's head. "Unfilial son! Drown in your miracles!" Her Royal Highness, who was exuding a cold aura, shouted angrily. Chapter 28. In the end, Euphemia didn't kill the middle-aged man and ordered him to be killed. Even though Euphemia had smashed its head with a bottle, it still crazily struggled to break free from her control. It licked the blood on its head like a dog, continuously licking the liquid on the ground. In fact, it was so crazy that it did not care even when its head was cut by the glass shards on the ground. Pot, fruit, fruit, amidst the heavy breathing, indistinct murmurs could be heard. Looking at the beast-like, no, even worse than a beast, humanoid monster lying on the ground, Euphemia weakly let go of her hands and let the broken bottle fall to the ground. Rei Minkai, who was quick to react, saw Euphemia's body sway and immediately went forward to support this delicate-looking princess. At the same time, Rei Minkai gave a signal to his subordinates. After the middle-aged man was dragged away, Rei Minkai said apologetically, "Sorry? Your Highness, I've frightened you." Euphemia shook her head slowly. Although her voice was soft, it was strangely firm. She slowly said, "No, I don't want to see you again. Kay. Don't blame yourself. In the end, I should be thanking you." "Thanking me?" Rei Minkai was slightly surprised. "Yes." Euphemia lowered her head and looked at Rei Minkai's right hand that was supporting her. She stretched out her left hand and grabbed it. She said with a bit of strength, "Thanks to you, I've seen the truth. This might be the truth that royal sister, the governor, didn't want me to see, but also wanted me to understand." Rei Minkai felt Euphemia's increasing strength and helplessly laughed. "In the end, you still let me be the bad guy?" "No. Kay. I'm thanking you from the bottom of my heart." Euphemia lightly pushed away Rei Minkai's right hand. She turned around and looked straight into Rei Minkai's eyes. She said word by word, "Believe me, Kay. This gratitude is real." Rei Minkai smiled and nodded solemnly. "Yes. I believe in your highness' intentions." Euphemia smiled and said seriously, "Now I want to talk to you. Just the two of us." After saying that, Her Highness subconsciously looked at the world behind the door. There were more than 10 people who were immersed in their own hallucinations. Some of them kept saying that they wanted to go on a business trip and were determined to do something big. Some of them were half lying on the ground, looking lovingly at the empty ground in front of them. They raised their hands and gently touched the air, but their mouths were calling their children's names. Some of them raised their arms and shouted as they looked at the void with feverish gazes, chanting slogans from neon boards. Some of them had ferocious faces and murderous gazes as they held bamboo poles and forcefully stabbed the air in front of them. At the same time, they were muttering as if there was an enemy standing in the void in front of them who wanted to kill them at all costs. The more he looked, the more Euphemia couldn't bear to look at him. In the end, the Empress, who had finally calmed down, turned her head and looked at the masked knight standing beside her. "Kay. Let's go back. This place is not suitable for talking." "As you wish, my princess." Royd, Sayer, Veretta, and the others who had sorted out the preliminary evaluation report left the command vehicle reasonably, leaving space for Rei Minkai and Euphemia. "Your Highness, have a cup of hot tea to calm down." Rei Minkai handed the boiled black tea to Euphemia. "Thank you. Kay, you forgot." Euphemia took the black tea and rolled her eyes at Rei Minkai. Rei Minkai was stunned for a moment before he smiled and said, "Yes, I forgot. UFFI. Yes." Euphemia nodded with a straight face and took a small sip of the black tea. At this time, Rei Minkai knew that the main show was about to begin. "Kay. Why are they addicted to that illusory world? So much so that they don't even care about their loved ones." No matter how Euphemia thought about it, she couldn't understand the thoughts of those who took illegal drugs, including the middle-aged man. "Why?" Rei Minkai asked back. He put the teacup on the table and leaned against the wall. He said slowly, "Because of the misfortune of reality." "Misfortune?" Euphemia muttered this word softly. "Yes. Misfortune. I believe, Euphemia, you still remember the Britannia Empire's attack on Japan and the establishment of District 11, right?" "Yes, I remember." Speaking of the establishment of District 11, Euphemia's face also showed a trace of unnaturalness. After all, as a kind-hearted empress, Her Highness didn't quite agree with the Britannia Empire's actions back then. Even if she knew that this was a war to control cherry stone and other important energy minerals. Yes. After the war ended, the name of Japan was removed and replaced by the insulting name, District 11. Rei Minkai saw that Euphemia wanted to speak, so he raised his hand to signal Euphemia to calm down. Of course, from the standpoint of the Empire, this is just an organization set up for the convenience of management. But for the people of Japan, who had become slaves of their country overnight, this was nothing to be proud of. On the contrary, the more concise the Empire used numbers as a reference, the more it aroused their reverse psychology. Speaking of this, Rei Minkai sneered. In fact, even without the numerical designation, the reverse psychology of the Japanese wouldn't be that bad. But in the factories of the concession, aren't there many reputable Britannians working? Euphemia raised the doubts in her heart. Ha! They are just forced to make a living. Ray Minkai shook his head and gave an example. Suzuki, you have seen UFFI just now. Before he came into contact with illegal drugs, his income was enough to support his entire family. But why would he still come into contact with illegal drugs and be addicted to it? This time, it was Ray Minkai's turn to ask questions. Obviously, this question was not something that Euphemia could answer. Ray Minkai did not let Euphemia think for long and quickly announced the answer. UFFI. Do you remember during the day when the managers were faced with their own mistakes, they showed ugly expressions? Under Ray Minkai's guidance, Euphemia recalled that even when facing her, the third princess of the Britannia Empire, in the face of conclusive evidence of their crimes, the factory owners still insisted that the reputable Britannians were just lowly and not worth mentioning. Even if they worked themselves to death, they died for the Great Britannia Empire. This was glorious and sacred. This was the attitude of those factory owners towards the reputable Britannians. Thinking of this, Euphemia did not speak for a long time, because she knew that any words in the face of this fact, this reality, was so pale and powerless. Ray Minkai shook his head and sighed. Although they can bring food and clothing to their families, in fact, they suffer heavy, almost suffocating pressure. This pressure is like a huge rock that constantly accumulates on their shoulders until it's like a huge mountain that's pressing down on them, crushing them. Ray Minkai raised his hand and took the red bottle sample left on the command vehicle, put it on the table, and said jokingly, "In the end, redemption appeared. Even if this redemption will cost them their lives." Euphemia stared at the red bottle that had caused countless people to fall in love with it for a long time, and softly said, "Just like those people just now." "Yes, just like them. UFFI, what you saw tonight is just a corner of the truth in District 11. Ray Minkai paused and then said, "UFFI. You should remember when you invited me, I rejected you." Euphemia nodded and looked at Ray Minkai with some anger. "Since I was young, you are the first person to reject me." Ray Minkai shook his head with a wry smile, pointed at the red bottle, and said solemnly, "This is my answer." Then, Ray Minkai turned his head, looked straight into Euphemia's eyes, and said in a deep voice, "UFFI. This world is so cruel. Utopia does not exist in this world. Yes, the world is so cruel. In just a blink of an eye, the life of the most important person was taken away." Euphemia's voice gradually became louder. "But, even so, I still want to build a world where no one will lose the most important person." "How?" UFFI. Ray Minkai's voice changed from light to heavy, and gradually became stern. "How?" Euphemia Lee Britannia. Before today, you knew nothing about the truth of the 11th District. Before coming to the 11th District, you were still the kindest third princess of the Britannia Empire. After seeing the cruel truth, what can you do? You can't even save these human beings who have fallen into disillusionment. What right do you have to claim that you want to build a world where no one will lose the most important person? Ray Minkai's stern voice kept ringing in Euphemia's ears, and his terrifying eyes pierced into Euphemia's heart like a knife, constantly whipping and torturing Euphemia's heart. Euphemia. The third princess opened her mouth, but she couldn't say anything. In the end, she could only bow her head powerlessly. "I don't know." "Really? You don't know?" Ray Minkai's stern voice gradually became soft. Slowly, he said, "It's good that you don't know. If you don't know, then it means that you will know, and you will understand what you have to do and what you can do. Now, what you need to do is to think about what happened today. Then, when you get the answer, put your thoughts into action." Under Ray Minkai's gentle words, Her Royal Highness took a deep breath and looked up at the masked knight. At that time, Kay, will you still refuse me? If your Royal Highness's answer can get my approval, then, Knight Kay is willing to become your Royal Highness sword. Chapter 29. Euphemia had returned to the governor's mansion. Right now, it was time for Department Q to officially start work. K. The results of the interrogation are out. Veretta handed the document with the interrogation results to Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai nodded, opened the document and glanced at it. Then, he looked back at the confident Royd. Royd, what's the result on your side? Royd smiled and nodded. It's similar to the results of Veretta's interrogation. Although the illicit drugs placed in the basement look almost the same, according to the results of the sampling inspection, at least 1/3 of the illicit drugs here contain the mysterious substance we discovered. After Royd finished speaking, Veretta also nodded. According to the interrogation results obtained from the leader of the drug traffickers, it is indeed similar to Royd's speculation. 1/3. Ray Minkai closed his eyes and thought for a moment, then sneered a few times. Did the leader reveal the source of the illicit drugs? Veretta nodded first, then shook her head. A part of it, but those are the channels that Governor Cornelia is currently dealing with. As for the 1/3 of the illicit drugs, the leader couldn't give any useful information. Oh! Ray Minkai rubbed his chin and thought, assuming that the goods were not purchased by the leader himself, then it means that this batch of drugs was provided to them by another gang. Yes. Cecil, who was looking at the illicit drugs piled on the side, suddenly exclaimed. Then, she walked over with a red bottle in each hand. K. Royd Veretta. Look, there's a mark on the bottom of the bottle. With Cecil's reminder, Ray Minkai and the others all looked at the bottom of the red bottle in Cecil's right hand. Q. An English letter was printed on the bottom of the red bottle. On the other hand, the bottom of the red bottle in Cecil's left hand was smooth and flat. Are these letters referring to illegal drugs that contain that mysterious substance? Veretta's brows furrowed slightly as she voiced out the doubts in her heart. Yes, that's right. In the beginning, I didn't notice it either. But just now I suddenly saw this at the bottom of the sample bottles from which we found the mysterious substance. Sahil pointed at the Q mark and continued, You're right. So, I speculated that the bottle with the Q mark was what we were looking for. This time, Ray Minkai and Royd didn't need to say anything. Royd knowingly took the newly obtained sample and once again immersed himself in the testing work with Cecil. Although this was already set in stone, out of caution, Ray Minkai and Royd decided to do another test. Veretta, are there any other clues? Ray Minkai still didn't give up and asked. Veretta lowered her head and thought for a while before she suddenly exclaimed. Right. The leaders seemed to have mentioned that there would be a delivery tomorrow. Tomorrow? Ray Minkai's eyes lit up when he heard this clue. One had to know that the leader was interrogated last night. It was now the morning of the second day. In other words, the so-called tomorrow was today. Time and place. As soon as possible. Yes. Valletta knew that time was of the essence. She nodded and immediately turned around to interrogate the leader again. The sun was high in the sky. Ray Minkai, who didn't sleep all night, once again brought the frontline members of Department Q to the side of the concession near Mount Fuji. There was a relatively sparsely populated forest there. Even if there was an occasional truck driving through the mud road in the forest, it wouldn't attract anyone's attention. If this forest was used as a secret trading place, it was indeed enough. Ray Minkai stood on the hillside and silently looked at the mud road that extended from the highway to the depths of the forest. K. It has been arranged. The vanguard has already sneaked in. It is estimated that there will be information back in 5 minutes. Veretta, who had changed into a rather unique driving suit, stood beside Ray Minkai and said in a low voice, Let the Sunderland team get ready. Ray Minkai nodded and turned his head to look at Veretta and shook his head. Actually, this time you don't have to drive Sunderland out. In a few days, your new body should be able to go offline. In response to Ray Minkai's kindness, Veretta firmly said, "No. As a knight, I can't stand aside and watch the fight when it's within my ability." Is that so? Then, Veretta knew, go prepare. The next battle may be a difficult one. Seeing how determined Veretta was to participate in the battle, Ray Minkai couldn't exclude her from the battle order. Moreover, his intuition was faintly warning him. There seemed to be some unexpected events in the next battle. Beep beep. At this time, a rapid notification sounded. It's the Vanguard team. Veretta, who had just walked away, took out the walkie-talkie that she had already contacted the Vanguard team to confirm. She then turned around and returned to Ray Minkai's side and handed the walkie-talkie to him. "This is K. What's the situation?" "Yes. The situation is true, but the scene seems a bit strange." The voice of the Vanguard team member came from the walkie-talkie. "Report the situation." Ray Minkai's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly shouted. However, on the other side of the walkie-talkie, there was a sudden cracking sound, and a slight scream hidden in it. "Not good. They've been discovered. Sunderland team, attack." "Veretta, I'll leave the Sunderland team to you. I want to drive the Lancelot first." "Yes, my lord." Buzz. Under the colorful sunlight that was torn into countless pieces by the dense leaves, the Lancelot turned into a white ghost and shuttled through the forest at full speed, trying to rush to the area where the Vanguard team was in the shortest time possible. As he rushed, a white light suddenly flashed in front of him. Ray Minkai's heart tightened. He subconsciously withdrew his left hand and pushed his right hand. The speeding Lancelot suddenly lowered its body and immediately slid across the ground in a low posture, quickly rushing out of the forest. At the same time, a dazzling light also brushed past the top of the Lancelot's head and disappeared into the forest. Boom! As the violent explosion blew up a large part of the forest, as the billowing flames mixed with thick smoke rose into the air, a Sunderland, a black body, holding a long spear that was about 2 meters long, compared to the Sunderland, the black Sunderland was standing not far in front of Lancelot. Ray Minkai could also see through the Lancelot's surveillance camera that there were some body tissues scattered around the black Sunderland. Those were the body tissues from the human body. It was not difficult for Ray Minkai to confirm the original identity of these scattered body tissues from the remains of the clothes that were still left on these body tissues. Obviously, the Vanguard team had been killed. The murderer was the black Sunderland in front of him. Ray Minkai didn't say anything, nor did he act like in the movies, where he had to talk a lot before he fought with the villain. Instead, he said, at the slightest disagreement, he started fighting. Lancelot's high-speed driving wheels instantly exploded. Dust flew everywhere. Lancelot immediately turned into a white shadow and swam back and forth in the forest as fast as lightning. That attack just now. And that huge gunshot. It was not difficult for Ray Minkai to determine that this black Sunderland should be different from the one he had encountered in the Shinjuku slums. Its power should come from that strange, huge gun. As expected. While Lancelot was wandering around, trying to find an opportunity to launch an attack, the black Sunderland moved. The huge gun, which was about 2 meters long, was lifted up effortlessly. It quickly locked onto Lancelot's position and shot out a beam of light. Buzz! The dazzling beam of light seemed to tear through the void. As it pounced straight at Lancelot's position, it swept through, devoured, and destroyed everything in its shooting axis. It did not stop until nothing could be left. Facing the beam of light with such terrifying force, Lancelot dodged to the side, trying his best to avoid the incoming beam attack. At the same time, he used his maximum attack rate to activate his energy light shield, blocking in front of him. Stab! A dazzling light that was enough to take away everything. A violent vibration. The constant beeping of warnings. And on the screen in front of him, the feedback interface that showed Lancelot's various conditions was quickly turning from green to red. Boom! A loud sound that resounded through the heavens and earth engulfed Lancelot. Then, in the huge column of smoke that rose into the air, Lancelot, whose body was covered in cracks and wounds, retreated. After knocking down several trees in succession, with Mecha's efforts, he was able to stabilize his body. The energy light on Lancelot's left arm flickered a few times, and then with a burst of explosion, it ended its life. The situation is not good. The enemy in front of him was too powerful. So powerful that Mecha, who had boarded Lancelot, felt a sense of powerlessness. Although from the outside, this was a Sunderland painted black. But Mecha knew that Sunderland did not have such a powerful beam weapon. In the Britannia Empire's army, only Lancelot was equipped with a beam weapon. Viretta, you take the Sunderland team to the back, I'll take care of this. Mecha opened the communication channel, and after calmly giving the order, he directly closed the channel. How unsightly! Do you want to deal with that monster alone? The mysterious white cat's voice suddenly came from the corner of the cockpit. Mecha smiled lightly, and looked at the black Sunderland that was slowly walking out of the thick smoke, and said, "Don't I still have you? I won't argue with you this time." The fur on the white cat's body gradually stood up, its azure eyes were filled with killing intent, and its deep voice slowly narrated. Kai, our enemy, the enemy that destroyed our homeland, has finally caught up. Chapter 30. Enemy? Hometown? Mecha didn't understand what the white cat was saying at all. Yes, that's the light that destroyed our hometown. Even if I die, I won't forget it. After the white cat let out a low growl, it turned around to look at Mecha and said, "Kai, although this body is a little ugly, leave it to me. You just need to pilot it and defeat the enemy." After the white cat glanced at Mecha, it actually jumped into the screen in front of Mecha. While he was stunned, Lancelot's body damage system that was constantly floating red quickly turned from red to green, as if the previous damage had never appeared. Moreover, Lancelot's energy index had soared to the limit in just 2 breaths, and it was even about to break through the upper limit and enter the next stage. However, Mecha knew that if this rapidly expanding energy was allowed to run wild, the first one to explode would be Lancelot himself. "Kai, what are you still standing there for?" The white cat's voice sounded in the cockpit. Mecha's eyes focused, and Lancelot raised the variable Vari's rifle in his hand and locked onto the black Sunderland that had completely walked out of the thick smoke. As Mecha pulled the trigger, a ball of purple light appeared in front of the muzzle of the rifle at a speed visible to the naked eye and grew bigger. Then, the trigger was released. The purple ball of light immediately stirred up bursts of wind and thunder, howling as it pounced towards the black Sunderland. Boom! The black Sunderland, who would not sit still and wait for death, raised the strange huge gun in its hand and fired a beam of light at the incoming purple ball of light. Rumble! The moment the purple ball of light collided with the beam of light, an earth-shattering and intense energy collision immediately erupted from the point of collision. Explosion, gale, space, even light, all in this instant destroyed the forest, roared at the sky, space was torn apart. It took away the light. Mecha, who was at the center of the explosion, didn't know what was happening outside. All he knew was that Lancelot hadn't been defeated, and hadn't been hit by Sunderland's laser beam. The situation was still in a deadlock. Yes. Even though the situation outside had already caused an earth-shattering explosion, Lancelot was still in a stalemate with Black Sunderland. "Hold on a little longer." The white cat's low growl sounded in the cockpit again. However, Mecha could tell that the white cat was not in a good state. However, just as the white cat had said, he could only persevere. For some reason, Ray Minkeye could clearly sense Lancelot's condition. He could feel the energy flowing through Lancelot's steel body. Then, the energy gathered in front of the rifle's muzzle and turned into a purple beam of light that clashed with the beam shot by Black Sunderland. However, even though Lancelot and Ray Minkeye were using all their strength, Black Sunderland's beam of light was still advancing steadily, gradually pushing Lancelot's line of defense back until it was right in front of Lancelot. "Hold on!" the white cat growled. Just as the light in front of him was about to drown Lancelot, a loud lion's roar suddenly exploded. Roar! In the light, a shadow stepped through the air and landed in front of Lancelot. It raised its claws and slapped, and a crack suddenly appeared in front of Lancelot. In an instant, the beam of light that broke through Lancelot's line of defense sank into the crack and disappeared. Then, the shadow exerted force with its hind legs and stepped with its front claws. Its whole body jumped into the air, raised its claws, and slapped down heavily on Black Sunderland. Boom! A golden flash flashed and disappeared. The Black Sunderland was split into two in the blink of an eye as the golden light flashed. It crashed heavily onto the ground and exploded with a loud bang. Roar! In front of the fireball formed by the explosion of Black Sunderland, the white shadow stood with its head held high. Another loud lion's roar resounded through the sky. This lion's roar that resounded through the sky alarmed everyone in this forest. Let's not talk about Royd Veretta and the others for now. On the cliff on the other side of the forest, two figures were watching the changes in the forest from above. They were a middle-aged man in a white coat and a slender beautiful woman in a pink nurse uniform. "We've been discovered. Looks like we'll have to be quiet for a few days. Phoenix, let's go back." The man in the white coat shrugged helplessly. When he was about to turn around and leave the cliff, he found that his right-hand man, Phoenix, was staring at the forest behind him. Phoenix. The vigilance shown by the beautiful assistant did not surprise the man in the white coat, because, in addition to assisting him in medical treatment, this beautiful assistant also had the duty to protect him and not be harmed by anyone. Dr. Zisali stepped back. The beautiful assistant stepped forward and blocked in front of the man in the white coat. "Gotcha!" Footsteps were heard. This was not because of Phoenix's eyes that were gradually filled with murderous intent, but because the other party deliberately broke the branches on the ground. "Dr. Zisali. Nurse Phoenix. I didn't expect that on a vacation mission I would meet a big fish." Following the half-teasing, half-serious words, a girl in red with a long ponytail walked out of the forest and stood not far in front of the man in the white coat and the beautiful nurse. "You!" When the man in the white coat saw the girl's appearance, he could not help but be shocked. "It's you!" The man pointed at the girl's face in surprise and said, "I didn't expect that the pioneer's biological daughter would personally come to this low-level civilized world." "Didn't expect." The girl smiled lightly, her eyes flashing with the terrifying light unique to hunters. "Are you surprised? Compared to you, I'm more surprised that the famous doctor and nurse would appear here." The girl quickly glanced in the direction of the lion's roar and stared at the man in the white coat and said, "I'm afraid that the commotion just now was caused by you?" The man in the white coat, the doctor the girl called Zisali, was about to speak when he was unexpectedly stopped by the beautiful nurse. "Doctor, after I count to 3, you turn around and jump off the cliff. This is the only way to escape capture." "Phoenix!" Zisali shouted in a low voice. But the beautiful nurse shook her head. "Doctor, although I'm your medical nurse, but before that, I'm a combatant." As her voice fell, the beautiful nurse took a big stride and pounced toward the girl. Woo! The sound of the wind suddenly rose. It was a fist. The beautiful nurse's flawless white fist carried gusts of wind as it fiercely smashed toward the girl's face. In the face of such a terrifying fist, the girl's expression remained calm. She moved her feet and narrowly dodged the beautiful nurse's fist. Then, the girl raised her right hand and caught the beautiful nurse's fist. Naturally, the beautiful nurse wouldn't just stand by and watch her fist being controlled by the girl. Therefore, the beautiful nurse decisively raised her left hand, clasped her palm together like a knife, and fiercely chopped down on her right arm. Gotcha! In a burst of electric sparks, the beautiful nurse who had chopped off her right arm took a few steps back and used her intact left hand to take out a button from her pocket. Gotcha! A violent surge of energy immediately erupted from the right arm that the beautiful nurse had chopped off. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the girl's position was engulfed by the energy explosion that erupted from her right arm. Go! The beautiful nurse didn't have the joy of a successful design on her face. Instead, she grabbed Dr. Zasali with a gloomy expression and jumped off the cliff with the doctor without looking back. In the thick smoke, a gust of wind with golden light swept through. The roiling flames and thick black smoke were all blown away. Oh no! I've been tricked. TSK. The girl who was accidentally killed by the beautiful nurse's design but was still intact looked around and said with some frustration. The girl raised her hands and looked at the armor that was forced to wear after the defense program was activated due to the emergency situation just now. She shook her head helplessly. I didn't expect the rumored beautiful nurse to be a cyborg. Were the people who collected the information mesmerized by her? So, they never updated the information about her? The girl patted her head in distress, opened the communication module on the armor, and shouted, Demonis! Update the information. Nurse Phoenix may be a partially modified secondary human, but there's also a high chance that she's a cyborg transformed from a complete biochemical surgery. Demonis! Information confirmed. Modified. This ship has detected abnormal energy fluctuations. Do you want to request reinforcements? The girl shook her head and refused without even thinking about it. No. Demonis. Maintain the current track and continue to execute the third monitoring program. Leave the matters on Earth to me for the time being. Understood. Demonis. Order confirmed. Continue with the original plan. After ending the communication with Demonis, the girl put away her armor, walked to the cliff, and looked at the woods below. Next time I'll never let you go. Just you wait. Chapter 31. Roar! A roar rang out in the darkness. Then, a huge shadow slowly walked out of the darkness, exposing the huge white head under the faint light. His cold pupils were flowing with golden light. Thick and long sharp teeth shining with golden light. Golden sharp claws refracting a deep cold light. This was simply a huge creature like an ancient behemoth that had walked out of the primordial world. Lion. When he saw the true appearance of this huge figure, a name suddenly appeared in Rei Minkai's mind. But before he could blurt out this name, the huge creature turned around and looked at the darkness, as if inviting him, indicating for Rei Minkai to look into the depths of the darkness with it. Before Rei Minkai could react, his feet seemed to have left his control. He walked forward on his own and stood beside the white beast, looking into the depths of the darkness. As his gaze focused, a dot of light suddenly flashed in the depths of the darkness. It became brighter and brighter, until the moment the brightness of the dot of light reached its limit, a dazzling light erupted, and at the same time, Rei Minkai was drowned in it. Roar! In the dazzling light, another roar was heard. But this time, there were countless different roars following behind that roar, rising and falling one after another, continuously sounding. It seemed to be calling for something. When Rei Minkai put down his right hand that was blocking in front of his eyes, what appeared in front of him was no longer the dead darkness, but an endless plain. And in front of Rei Minkai, on the other side of the plain, there was a darkness that was churning with blood and fire, emitting an ominous and disgusting aura. Roar! Another roar came from beside him. Lei Mingkai turned his head to the side and discovered that there was a huge cliff not far to his right. And at the top of the cliff, there was a giant steel beast lying on its stomach. A silver horn. A purplish-red metal mane. A majestic and mighty body. As he looked at it, Lei Mingkai suddenly discovered that the shape of the steel beast, and even its tyrannical aura, was very similar to the white beast he had seen just now. No. Or rather, the two might be the same giant beast. Gotcha! In the dark sky, a series of thunderous roars could be heard. The lightning that made people feel uneasy swam wildly in the dark clouds. Amidst the lightning and thunder, the eyes of the steel behemoth lying on top of the cliff suddenly lit up. Roar! The steel behemoth raised its head and let out a resounding roar. In the midst of this roar, a sandstorm suddenly appeared on the plains below the cliff. Rumble! Amidst the sandstorm, a series of roars that almost covered the thunder and lightning in the sky quickly occupied the sky above the plains. Lei Mingkai took a closer look, and was surprised to find that the deafening roar was the sound of countless steel beasts of different shapes and sizes running at high speed. They were all metal lifeforms. In fact, Lei Mingkai could even feel the intense vibrations coming from the ground as the steel behemoths ran at a terrifying speed. Is this a war? Lei Mingkai was keenly aware of what was going on with this shocking scene in front of him. In the ominous darkness in the distance of the plains, it suddenly began to roll crazily, as if it was nurturing something. At this moment, the steel behemoths that were running at high speed suddenly split into three groups. The two groups on the left and right circled around from the side, forming a pair of wings that responded to each other. As for the steel behemoth in the middle, as it began to slow down, it also opened the huge cannons on its back, and missiles that were ready to fire. Boom! 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 In the next moment, the giant cannons roared and the missiles screamed. At this moment, lightning and thunder were no longer the main characters of the sky. At this moment, the ones that could become the main characters were those cannonballs and missiles that tore through the air and broke through the sky. Whistling sounds, surging towards the endlessly tumbling darkness. Rumble! The sound of explosions was endless. Balls of fire bloomed crazily in the uneasy darkness like bamboo shoots after the rain. However, in Lei Mingkai's opinion, this was undoubtedly a terrifyingly powerful attack, but it did not cause the slightest bit of damage to the endlessly rolling darkness. In the midst of his surprise, the endlessly rolling blood fire suddenly exploded. At the same time that the blood and fire turned into a beautiful rain of fire, huge black figures broke through the darkness, bringing with them an extremely ominous aura that made one's scalp numb as they appeared in front of the steel beasts. Their appearance actually caused the steel behemoths to subconsciously take a step back. Roar! At this moment, the horned steel behemoth that had been standing on the cliff jumped down and turned into a purple stream of light. In the blink of an eye, it rushed to the front of the steel behemoth's formation and stood in front of the monsters that had rushed out of the darkness without fear. A great battle was about to begin. At this critical moment, a sense of weightlessness suddenly swept over, dragging Lei Mingkai into the darkness and losing all consciousness. When Lei Mingkai regained consciousness, he discovered that an intense pain was tearing his body apart. "You're awake?" While being attacked by the immense pain, Lei Mingkai vaguely heard Sayer's voice. Miss Sayer? Lei Mingkai gritted his teeth and forced his eyes open, trying to see his surroundings clearly. As a result, Lei Mingkai found himself lying in a ward, and his hands and feet were fixed by a thick layer of plaster. In this regard, Lei Mingkai was even more surprised to find that he didn't seem to be surprised or overwhelmed by the situation in front of him. Are you feeling unwell? It was Sayer sitting by the bed. After she raised her hand and pressed the bell at the bedside, she looked at Lei Mingkai, who was looking around, and said, "You've been unconscious for a week. How do you feel now?" "A week?" Ray Minkai froze for a moment, and he couldn't help but think of the situation when he fought with the mysterious Black Sunderland. At the critical moment, there seemed to be a white shadow appearing in midair and saving Lancelot and him. In the end, Ray Minkai couldn't help but fall into a coma. It wasn't until now that he woke up. Ray Minkai carefully took a breath to avoid touching the wound. Although he couldn't check his body now, it wasn't difficult to see what kind of situation his body was in from the pain coming from all over his body. What was the result of the operation? Ray Minkai gradually adapted to the pain and asked Sayre. Sayre nodded. It should be said that it was very successful. The Sunderland team, led by Veretta, found a large number of banned drugs containing mysterious substances in the basement of a cabin deep in the woods. Also, they seized a batch of tools that seemed to be used for processing. Did you catch anyone? Ray Minkai frowned. He tried to straighten his body but to no avail, so he calmly accepted his current state. Except for the Black Sunderland that was crippled by Lancelot, we didn't catch anyone related. Sayre's answer didn't make Ray Minkai feel frustrated or surprised. If the White Shadow hadn't suddenly appeared and saved him and Lancelot, the Black Sunderland would have quickly retreated from the woods and destroyed the evidence after killing Lancelot. While he was thinking, the doctors and nurses who rushed over exchanged a few words with Sayre and immediately began to examine Ray Minkai. In desperation, Ray Minkai could only be at the mercy of the doctors and nurses. After a while, Sayre looked at the unhappy Ray Minkai with amusement. It seems that your strange physique won't be able to help you much this time. Just now, the doctor made a preliminary assessment. It will take at least a month for you to recover to the extent of free movement. A month? The corner of Ray Minkai's mouth twitched, and for a moment, there was a trace of despair. He didn't expect that with the help of the mysterious white cat, he would fall into such a situation. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai looked to the side of the ward. There. A small bamboo basket was quietly placed there. That is? Ray Minkai seemed to think of a possibility. This. Did you save this white cat? When we found Lancelot and pulled you out of the cockpit, we found you hugging this white cat tightly. As Sayre spoke, he carefully showed the situation in the bamboo basket to Ray Minkai. Sure enough, the mysterious white cat was really lying quietly in the bamboo basket. Just take it that I saved it. Can you see it? Ray Minkai hesitated for a moment and slowly nodded. See it? Sayre blinked and asked doubtfully, Isn't it sleeping in the bamboo basket? It's strange that it was in a coma for a week, just like you. Sayre carefully covered the white cat with a small quilt and continued, If it weren't for the inspection that this white cat was not only fine, but also very clean, I'm afraid it wouldn't be allowed to be brought here. Is that so? Thank you. That, Sayre, is your work okay? Ray Minkai nodded and asked tentatively. Yes. Sayre looked down at his watch and exclaimed, It's time for the handover, why isn't Royd here yet? After thinking for a while, Sayre said, I'll go back and see what Royd is doing, and left in a hurry. After waiting for a while, Ray Minkai was sure that no one would come for the time being. He stared at the bamboo basket and slowly shouted, White cat, are you dead? You're the one who's dead. A low roar sounded from the bamboo basket, and the mysterious white cat's figure jumped out and gently landed on Ray Minkai's bed. You little brat, you really know how to make trouble. After the mysterious white cat mocked, it suddenly said with some loneliness, Even so, I'm in a similar situation. The white cat sighed, walked to the side of Ray Minkai's head, and lowered its head to look into his eyes. Our enemy has appeared. But now that I've exhausted all my strength, I can only fall into a deep sleep for the time being. Before that, I'll speed up your recovery. Do everything in your power to investigate why our enemy appeared in this world. Then, before the white cat finished speaking, it closed its eyes and collapsed on the bed. Chapter 32. The White Cat was in a deep sleep. Or rather, the mysterious White Cat was in a deep sleep. Now, the White Cat lying in Veretta's arms had lost the sense of mystery that only Ray Minkai could see. It had become a cute cat that everyone loved, a cat that was like a pet cat. Why did the mysterious White Cat become like this? Ray Minkai didn't know, and he wasn't sure. From the beginning, there were too many mysteries surrounding the mysterious White Cat, so many that Ray Minkai wondered if he was shrouded in a fog like the White Cat. Maybe I'm not Ray Minkai? As soon as this question appeared, Ray Minkai smiled bitterly and sighed. Now, the only one who knew the truth, the White Cat, was in a deep sleep. No matter how much he suspected, he probably wouldn't be able to get an answer. The only thing he knew was that the enemies mentioned by the mysterious White Cat might have something to do with the mysteries surrounding him. If he could find those enemies, he might be able to get some answers. However, if he encountered enemies like the Black Sunderland again, Lancelot alone might not be enough. Veretta, what happened to the Black Sunderland that Lancelot killed? While thinking, Ray Minkai asked Veretta. Veretta knew that Ray Minkai wasn't asking about the Black Sunderland, but the strange spear that was broken in two. Royd is trying to figure out something from the two halves of the wreckage. But I'm afraid there won't be any breakthroughs in a short period of time. Is that so? I see. Ray Minkai wasn't surprised at all. After all, the strange weapon used by the Black Sunderland was indeed a technological crystallization and system that had never been seen before in this world. Even Royd, who designed and built the 7th-generation cutting-edge Lancelot, would probably be worried about how to crack it. Veretta, I'll leave Department Q to you for the time being. I can't move now. Ray Minkai glanced at the casts that were still fixed on his limbs, then looked up at Veretta and said, Understood. By the way, I'll take care of this White Cat. K. Since it's awake, it can't stay in the hospital. Veretta nodded and picked up the White Cat with both hands. The mysterious White Cat had fallen into a deep sleep, so the White Cat that had turned into an ordinary kitten couldn't stay in the hospital any longer. Leave it at the Special Mission Station. At least, it will be taken care of. Yes. After Ray Minkai explained a few things, Veretta left the hospital with the White Cat. Ray Minkai glanced at the ward that became quiet again, then slowly closed his eyes. Before the mysterious White Cat went into hibernation, it had indeed done as it had said. It had accelerated the self-recovery of Ray Minkai's body. Now, Ray Minkai could clearly feel that the pain that spread throughout his body was gradually subsiding, and the most important thing was that his limbs gradually began to regain some sense of touch. According to the current speed of recovery, Ray Minkai secretly estimated the time. There was a high probability that the recovery would be completed in 5 days. At this speed, the doctors would probably be shocked again. After all, Ray Minkai knew from Sehil and Veretta that when he was sent to the hospital, his limbs were all fractured, and there was also a large amount of internal bleeding. Under such an extremely dangerous situation, the doctors who participated in the rescue almost used all of their knowledge to pull Ray Minkai back from the jaws of death. Let's take it slow. Ray Minkai thought for a moment, and decided not to attract too much attention. However, he couldn't stay in the hospital for too long. Otherwise, the enemy's whereabouts might be lost. The opportunity quickly presented itself to him. The next day, after the doctors and nurses finished their routine inspection, the hospital was locked down by a group of people. Other than Ray Minkai's room, the other wards were temporarily not allowed to enter. Only the approved doctors and nurses, as well as the armed soldiers, could leave the wards. Other than the governor of District 11, there was no one else who could cause such a huge commotion. As expected, as the adjutant Dalton entered the ward, Ray Minkai's guess was confirmed. Governor, I'm very sorry. I'm temporarily unable to salute you. Ray Minkai lay on the bed and smiled bitterly. Cornelia, who followed Dalton into the ward, looked at Ray Minkai's 4 limbs that were fixed in plaster and nodded. Don't mind it, Kay. I will remember your contribution when I led my personal guards to cut off the passage of illegal drugs. Now your mission is to recover. As for the rest, leave it to me and your subordinates, Veretta. Cornelia sat on the stool that Dalton pulled over, and looked at Ray Minkai's injuries with concern. I heard that during your last operation, you encountered the strange Sunderland again? Ray Minkai nodded and smiled bitterly. Yes, Governor. This time, I faced the Black Sunderland alone. In the end, this is what you saw. It was a Pyrrhic victory. But in terms of results, you were victorious. You also brought back clues about the enemy in Area 11. Moreover, you let us know that other than the Chinese Federation's channels, there is another unknown force that is corrupting Area 11. No one can ignore your contribution. Cornelia seemed to be dissatisfied with Ray Minkai's bitter smile. Now, I have requested for a research team from my country to assist Royd in deciphering the remains. I believe that there will be results soon. Yes, Veretta has already told me about this. Ray Minkai nodded. That's good, Kay. Although I don't know why you lost your real name, you can now be considered a true knight. Quickly recover. Then, continue to roam the battlefield as a knight. Cornelia nodded, stood up, and looked at Ray Minkai seriously. Yes, Your Highness. Kay, if your body recovers fast enough, you may be able to participate in my next operation. Cornelia, who turned around and was about to leave, suddenly said something that made Ray Minkai feel that the opportunity was coming. Yes, Your Highness. I will try my best to restore my body to the point where it can support the battle. Ray Minkai solemnly responded. Is that so? Then I'll wait and see. Today, it was destined not to be quiet. As soon as Cornelia left, Euphemia took the baton and came to the ward where Ray Minkai was. Kay, your body. Although Euphemia learned about Ray Minkai's situation from the report, after seeing Ray Minkai's state with her own eyes, she couldn't help but be shocked. She quickly walked to the bed and asked worriedly, Yo, Deputy Governor, now I can't perform the knight salute to you. Ray Minkai grinned and teased himself. You! Euphemia froze for a moment and gave Ray Minkai a reproachful look. You're already like this. What's the point of fussing about that? Moreover, there's only the 2 of us here, you should call my name. Okay. UFFI. Don't worry. It's just a flesh wound. It'll be fine in a few days. Ray Minkai smiled and said indifferently. Flesh wound? You're already like this. Your limbs are fractured and your internal organs are bleeding. If it weren't for the skills of the doctors here, I'm afraid you'd be glorious. Euphemia's little face was full of worry. Yes, I was careless. I didn't expect the enemy to have such a trump card. Ray Minkai put away his teasing mood and his face gradually became serious. UFFI. From now on, it's best that you don't leave the concession. We don't know what else those people will do in the dark other than selling illegal drugs. But, Euphemia frowned as if she was unwilling to do so. No buts. UFFI. The governor is the goddess of war who gallops on the battlefield. At the same time, there are also personal guards following her. But you're different. Although you have the title of deputy governor, by your side, not to mention personal guards, you don't even have a knight. Ray Minkai took a breath and looked into Euphemia's eyes. Therefore, whether it's the governor or I, we're most worried about you. UFFI. Under Ray Minkai's insistence, Euphemia finally nodded and agreed to Ray Minkai's request. Immediately after, Euphemia couldn't stay in the hospital for too long. Moreover, the people who followed Euphemia's footsteps were Royd and the others. Oh, Kay. It's great to see that you're fine. I was worried that Lancelot's pilot would be gone. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Royd, who had 2 faint dark circles under his eyes, opened the door and sat by the bed. He carefully looked at Ray Minkai and said. Ray Minkai shook his head and said weakly, "Sometimes, I really hope you can find another pilot." "What? You want to use this incident to leave the special mission and leave Lancelot?" Looking at Royd's surprised face, Ray Minkai felt a little proud. Yes. After all, the enemy's power has far exceeded Lancelot's power limit. "Royd, what do you think I should do? This time, my limbs are fixed in plaster. Next time, I'm afraid I'll be lying in the Imperial Cemetery." Hearing Ray Minkai's words, Royd's face suddenly showed a trace of dissatisfaction. "It's just a beam rifle. Don't worry. Lancelot has already fixed it. Also, I deliberately increased the output of the energy beam shield," Royd said as he gestured with his fingers. "Although we still can't completely analyze the beam rifle, I got inspiration from it." Royd didn't keep him in suspense and said straightforwardly, "Now, Lancelot's energy beam shield is enough to withstand the beam attack you encountered before. Is that so? I can't wait to leave the hospital and get on Lancelot to test it." "Hee. Don't worry. As long as your body with amazing recovery can make it in time, you may be able to participate in the next Narita battle." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.